Hello and welcome to the Lunar Bridge. I am Lugbazurg, the man in the moon, also the very varied guy, and this time I'm shifting gears a bit on this engine. Long while I've been talking about independent comics and some novels so far, but there's also been another passion that it seems I've neglected to address at this point, and that is with video games and their development. So this time, I'm going to be talking about some of that since some things seem to be shifting around in the industry, and we got someone here who can shed some light on some of these areas here.
I hope so. Hey, how's it going?
Hi. Yeah, I've known Chris here a while, but haven't really gotten to have him on board so much, so still got so many people to get through here. But yeah, I guess a couple of things I'm certainly interested in hearing about, particularly from your more experienced perspective, is I suppose on one hand, uh, unsung aspects of game dev in the past, and also how things are looking moving forward, particularly on, say, the indie scene, from, in your opinion, now that there seems to be this mass exodus from Unity to Godot, any kind of effects from all that's been going on. Some dust is settling,
Oh
so there's
yeah.
probably some things to gather from all of that.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not I'm not being too optimistic on the future of console gaming, or at least from the big two. Uh, I don't know. Nintendo might be on its own little island, but a lot of these indies, I think, might just be kind of novel, like PC, possibly mobile, possibly Nintendo. But as far as gaming in general goes, yeah, I think the dinosaurs are seeing that meteorite about to hit.
Ooh. But yeah, I guess that's always been something that has had me interested ever since I literally dreamed up a game concept when I was 6 years old and went about making a design document in crayon. I'm actually holding in my hands right now. It's one of the most treasured things I've ever created, and it's like maybe about 90% salvageable content. It even has a world map in it.
Oh wow.
But yeah, that's certainly something I've wanted to do while I'm trying to figure out Godot.
Yeah.
Still early stages. I'm a bit new with this.
Does it use C sharp, or because I know
I guess we'll
that,
see.
yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what Unity uses is C sharp, or at least if you're a coder, that's generally what I've heard people relying on.
Now,
Although,
fortunately, I didn't get too deep into Unity.
ah,
I fiddled around with some prototyping stuff, but yeah, I think I'm going to just go all in with Godot indefinitely.
nice. Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of amped about Unreal, the UDK stuff. I don't know how predatory Epic Games is with the indies, but I know that UDK has been pretty helpful to a lot of indies as well.
Oh yeah, I followed some Unreal Sensei's content with getting started on that.
Nice.
Like, I think right around the horizon of Unreal 5 coming up.
Yeah. It's
I
I mean
finally have
it's
the hardware strong enough to power something like that. So I was like, oh, let's at least give it a shot. You can use it for free.
yeah. Well, yeah. The price is right. I wish we had that when I was younger.
Yeah, when yeah, I remember being a kid. I think the most expensive thing I ever bought before having an actual job was probably I think it might have I forget how much. Was it $80 or am I thinking of something else? But I remember getting like this uh Dark Basic Professional software once,
Oh wow.
trying to figure that out.
Yeah. Man, yeah. Well, I remember
I managed to follow the tutorial for like it had for building a very very bare bones FPS and figured out how to like change the music and the textures and stuff. But yeah, it was kind of hard to follow, especially since the entire tutorial was just in a book and not the software itself.
yeah, yeah. YouTube has been super useful in teaching indies, especially novices, because you'll find uh tutorials from any level in your skill kind of category, because you could be great at art but terrible at coding, or vice versa. And man, I wish this stuff existed 20 years ago.
Whew.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of Godot tutorials online as well, or at least something on YouTube or something. Because yeah, man, when I was starting up, the most we had was you basically had a Coke Pepsi war between the Unreal Engine for Unreal Tournament or Quake 3. Have fun, you know. You're gonna mod it. You're not gonna make your own game. You're just gonna mod the crap out of something else,
Yeah, Doom engine stuff. Or yeah,
Yeah.
or like what I remember seeing going back even further, recently seeing Masahiro Sakurai put out a video about what it was like developing for the NES.
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. You
That
ever see
looks
that
so
meme?
painful.
There's a meme out there of a JPEG of the Super Mario Brothers game, and it's just like one
Oh, I
level,
know what you're
and it
talking
says, yeah, it says this JPEG is larger in size than the entirety of the Super Mario Brother game from which this screenshot was taken.
about. Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty scary. Although I got to admit though, limitations breeds innovation. Um, working on both extremes where we were working within limitations, as much as it sucked, it also kind of kept you focused. Whereas when you had limitless, you know, uh, game development possibilities, you suddenly got like decision paralysis where you didn't know where to start because everything was like overwhelming, or you started getting feature creep, or you started getting, muddying the waters and what your core game loop was and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I've felt that.
Yeah. Yeah, look at every Ubisoft game. And
Yeah, no wonder they're not they're holding off on like Rayman and Splinter Cell, the stuff I actually care about. They don't quite fit that mold.
yeah, well, that Mirage game that just came out was essentially a repurposed DLC from Thor. No, from was it Assassin's Creed Valhalla? They're like, yeah, we can just make it a full retail game. There you go. Pop it on the PS5. Hop up the price a little. Try to make some money back. Man, Rayman though. Wow, yeah, that you remember that on I think that was like a flagship title on the 3DO. Or no, I'm sorry, the Atari Jaguar.
Yeah, I don't think I've gotten to actually use those particular platforms at this point.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they're a bit old. Both of them lost the disc war, or lost the 32-bit war. Um, I mean, it was a pretty turbulent time after the 16-bit era, where there was a very clear distinction, and it was basically you either had Sega or you had Nintendo. And then when Sega started doing all sorts of weird shit with the Mega, with the Genesis there, and they started adding on like I think they called it at one point the Tower of Power, where it was like they added on a disc reading unit and called it the Mega CD, and then they stacked on top of that a 32X, and they both sold absolutely horribly. And Nintendo saw that when they're like, "Oh, our competitor is making a disc-based system. Hello, Sony. inventor of the technology that does discs. Let's make a disc add-on for the Super NES. And then when they saw how badly Sega was hurting from these terrible foibles, they just kind of reneged on their business decision and left Sony high and dry. So Sony ended up making the PlayStation, and basically, yeah, that kicked Nintendo right in the ass.
And Nintendo tried going for, what was it, Philips?
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah. Nintendo was like, honestly, Nintendo was a monster back in the day. They were a terrible, like, as far as anti-consumer and anti-business went, like, like in the 8-bit era, they actually had a stipulation where it was something like you could only make like 1 or 2 games a year on the NES. And on top of that, they had
What?
and they had exclusivity rights. So like if you were, say, a developer, you had to sign an exclusivity deal with with Nintendo to say that you won't launch this game on any other platform other than the NES. And then on top of that, they said you can only do like 1 or 2 games a year. So what happened is a lot of companies to bypass this, because the Japanese are masters of following the letter of the law and not the spirit of the law. They ended up splitting up companies so that companies like Konami became Ultra, and I can't remember what the other company was, but they ended up having like 2 or 3 additional shell companies or like satellite companies underneath them that made additional games for the NES, so they could bypass that 1 or 2 games a year stipulation.
Wow, 80s problems require 80s solutions.
Yeah. Well, that carried over into the 16-bit era, and it really pissed a lot of people off, and that's why they start, like, if you recall, the Sega Masters. Oh no, not the Master. The Genesis got a special version of Street Fighter 2. It was called like the Special Champions Edition or whatever, because Capcom was still stuck with their exclusivity deal or whatever, and they could only. It was like it was amended slightly, where it wasn't just you could only make games for our system. It was you can't make the same game for multiple systems, which Midway or Acclaim seem to have gotten around with the Mortal Kombat series. But Capcom was kind of trapped with that, and they ended up they had Street Fighter 2, World Warrior, Street Fighter 2, Super Turbo or Turbo Edition, and then so on, Champions Edition or whatever. And they couldn't put that on the Genesis, so they ended up making like, oh, well, that is not the same game. Yeah, it's the same game. We just got it slightly different.
Okay, so it was more of a patch, not so much like change the IP or something.
Yeah. So the only place you'll ever be able to play Turbo Edition or whatever is on the Super NES, and the only place you'll ever be able to play Special Champions Edition is only on the Genesis. So it was like stupid things like that. So when
That
they
would explain why there's so many. I know I've seen like such an absurd amount of re-releases for that game in such a short period of time. I wasn't
yeah
actually aware that was the context for it.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of shenanigans going on, and I'm fairly certain that their dealings with Sony, leaving them high and dry like that with the Nintendo PlayStation, like I've actually seen proofs of concept. Like I've actually seen the physical model of the Nintendo PlayStation. It
Yeah, I know.
actually,
Yeah, I've even seen someone putting up footage showing it actually functioning. Like it
yep,
wasn't just a proof of concept kind of prototype
yeah, it
thing
was,
of just a model, but like they actually got it working. It just never hit
yep.
mass production.
Yeah, somebody actually put one up on eBay because they were the dev kits. They weren't the actual, like, there were no retail units ever made, but there were like a bunch of dev kits made. And yeah, it even was yellowing, that infamous yellowing plastic that Nintendo used for the Super NES.
Like that's got
Um
to be one of the best glimpses into a butterfly effect I've ever seen.
yeah. Yeah. But yeah, that really burned Sony. And I mean, to this day, even though both of them were or kind of are Japanese companies, I don't think there's any love between the two of them.
Yeah, so it is kind of odd seeing how much things have just completely changed over all this time now that like Nintendo and Microsoft are so buddy buddy.
Yeah.
and,
Oh,
and Sony just sulks in the corner, like seeing all the whole fiasco with trying to get crossplay with things like what was it? Rocket League and Fortnite.
yep.
What a disaster it was with Fortnite.
Well, a lot of that also has to do with the asininely designed kind of architecture between the platforms. When I was working on this was back, oh my god, I'm over a decade ago now. I was working in the Xbox 360 PS3 era, and one of the worst things you can do as a developer is make a cross-platform game or a multi-plat, because you're essentially doing double or triple the work or however many platforms that you have out there, and you're not getting that amount of money back in pay. Like you're making the same game multiple times. And the way that specific generation, the I can't remember what number it was, the sixth generation or whatever, where we had the Xbox 360, Wii, and PS3, was each system was so disparate in its architecture and design that it became a financial liability to make multiplats. And as a result, most of the games that were multiplat looked like utter ass, or at least performed very poorly because the systems themselves were designed in such a way that they did not play well with the other systems. And I don't know if that was by intention or not, but have you ever heard of TCRs or TRCs for console development?
That sounds familiar.
Yeah, so you have like terms and compliance testing. When
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when you develop, so when you develop a game for a PC, it's it's a lot easier. You have less headaches,
Yeah,
even
that's
though
all
the
I've done so
hardware.
far.
Yeah, even though the hardware is all divergent and stuff, and you have all these weird edge cases where AMD doesn't play well with Nvidia, or vice versa or whatever. Like that's nothing compared to what when you develop for a console, the manufacturer, Microsoft, Sony, or whomever, even Nintendo, they actually have these terms and compliance requirements where you initially send out a release candidate. They oftentimes call that going gold because it's on a gold disc, and they'll send the product out to these console manufacturers to have people at those companies test your game to see if it adheres to various compliance testing, where they're like, does it, if I put this game in the disc in the drive, will it blow up this console? Or is it a RAM hog? Does it have like memory leaks? Or a whole bunch of like weird things. They're testing to see how bad, like how bug ridden your game is essentially, and how much damage it could possibly do to their consoles. And that first test is free. So every developer, when they send it out there, it's like, okay, boom, there you go, send it out there. Almost no game that I've ever worked on has ever come back like passing that first TCR TRC testing period. It usually takes about 3 weeks. This is why games that are on PC usually get patches or updates like really quickly, whereas consoles it takes like an ice age. Because they have to go through those TRCs, 3 weeks. So after the 3 weeks, if it fails, then you have to address all of the bugs as fast as you can, and then resubmit it. And then for each subsequent test, it costs like a $5,000 or $6,000 or whatever. And I believe it actually goes up even higher. And you have to keep, sending out this thing until it passes TCR compliance. And then once that does, then you can send out the master for mass reproduction, get it out there, and now you've got your game and you can launch it. And unfortunately, the TCRs or the TRCs are very different based on the console manufacturers. And during that Xbox 360, PS3, Wii era, it was infuriating to design a game for. So for example, on the Xbox TRCs or TCR requirements, they had a stipulation that you cannot install more than whatever could fit on a memory card onto your Xbox 360, because those dumbasses decided to sell a model of the Xbox 360 that didn't come with a hard drive. So
Ooh.
yeah, they actually had a budget Xbox 360 that just had the memory card. So it came with like I think it was like a was it a 4 gig memory card or a 1 gig? I can't remember. It was something extremely small. And as a result, everything had to be streamed from the disc, which is not a problem because the Xbox 360 had a pretty fast reading disk drive. I can't remember what the speed was, but it was like a DVD something, whatever. It was super fast. However, now let's go over to the PlayStation was it TRC's? Their stipulation was every game has to be installed onto a hard drive because those dumbasses decided to put a 1x BD-ROM or a Blu-ray drive that only read at 1x on their systems. So whenever, if you recall, during the early years of the PlayStation 3, every game that you bought, you had to sit through like a 10-15 minute installation. Like Metal Gear Solid 4, you sat there and watched Snake smoke an entire
Yes, I remember that.
It was so stupid, but they did that because they had their own like special cell processor that was super fast and made excellent use of memory bus speed and all this stuff. And the only stipulation is it needed to be installed onto a hard drive locally, and you couldn't stream anything off the discs. So now you're developing a game that both has to conform to, has to be able to be read off of the disc, and can only install up to 4 gigs of hard drive space because of the stupid memory card limitations on the Xbox 360. But now you're also developing a game that can't be streamed off of the disc and has to have all of its assets and everything installed onto a hard drive. That's what people ran into dealing with that era or that generation of multi-plat games. So I'm not like, I didn't even get into the whole network, the weirdness with how networking works, because I know this is going to sound extremely like ethnocentric, but the West is so far ahead of Japan when it comes to online accounts and networking and that whole infrastructure that they have set up with things like Steam or Xbox Live. Those things are worlds ahead of anything Japan is capable of doing at the moment. I mean,
I was kind of feeling that when I was seeing what was going on with like the transition from the Wii to the Wii U, and people realizing, oh crud, our stuff won't carry over.
Yeah, and that is completely asinine. There's no reason why that shouldn't be that way other than just terrible design
or hard limits on like how, that were way too small on how much a downloadable game for the Wii could be. I remember hearing about that because of Sonic the Hedgehog episode 2.
Yep. Yeah. Well, not only that, but like, yeah. So not only are you like tethering
Sonic
all
4.
of your purchases to your console, but which is extremely limiting because, like, say your console breaks, oh no, buy a new console and rebuy all of those games that were on it. You also have a terrible online multiplayer experience. And again, if you look at Steam as a model for the way that they've developed their online, what is it? The matchmaking systems, the lobbies, the communications, all of that stuff that comes from a lot of Western ingenuity. And the Microsoft Xbox Live again had, in my opinion, an unparalleled online multiplayer experience. And then you look over at Nintendo Switch, and you look over at Sony PlayStation, which I believe just got hacked again, by the way. So about 10 years ago, 11 years ago or so, they Sony during the PS3 era kept all of their passwords and accounts on a plain text file that could be accessed, and people hacked the crap out of it, and everybody's accounts got stolen and all their credit card information was leaked. And yeah, Sony actually had PlayStation Network offline for like almost a month. Yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, I guess I'm also kind of reminded of something like you would all try to follow the development of Scalebound for the Xbox One.
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, that was painful. Like, that was something that probably would have sold me on an Xbox One alone. I was so looking forward to that. That looks so cool. And just seeing the irritation of them being demanded that they have to make it allow for 4-player co-op with the humanish and dragon characters being there simultaneously. So 8 characters in this what was supposed to be open world stylish action game or something. And the devs didn't want to do that, but they tried, and they're like, okay, we got it to work. This ridiculous request that we never wanted in our game in the first place, but it only works on the Xbox One X version. Can we please make it say that it will only work for this one? No, you gotta let it work on the bog standard one, even with this ridiculous feature no one wants. And then it gets canceled anyway. Like, I wanted to play that so bad.
Well, we saw what happens when they develop for the superior platform and have to scale down. I mean, look at the recent Mortal Kombat 1 on the Wii. On the Switch. Like, people are showing how awful it looks. They're like, look at how dumbed down it is. And it's like, I don't think you understand. Those devs had to make those compromises so you weren't playing a slideshow.
I don't know why they wanted 4-player co-op in this so bad. This doesn't lend itself to 4-player co-op.
Well, a lot of the push for co-op and online and or multiplayer and all that stuff is the dollar signs in the exec's eyes. Is that when you can turn a game into a service, you can turn players into payers. You know, they want recurring fees. Yeah.
Dead Space 3 was an omen.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's funny because, like I had mentioned, Nintendo's on their own little island, and in all honesty, I think that's benefited them the most. They've stagnated with a lot of their innovations, but at the same time, they understand what the value, like what customer value is in their products. You know, they're cheaper, they're less sophisticated, they're pretty much the same game you've been playing for 40 plus years, you know, give or take a few innovations here and there, but there's nothing groundbreaking about them. And they understand that that doesn't need to happen. Like a lot of modern games. Oh, sorry.
And then they came and gobsmacked the industry with Tales of the Kingdom's crazy systems.
Yeah. Oh, God. Well, yeah. The was it the magic hand and nuts and bolts.
Like virtually every single interactable item in the entire game can be like grabbed and fused to virtually every other interactable item in the game.
Yep. Yeah, but I mean, that alone, that's what took them 6 years of development for essentially making a glorified expansion pack for Breath of the Wild. I mean, the game itself really wasn't all that that impressive, or in scope size, it really wasn't all that that much larger than Breath of the Wild. But then all of a sudden you toss in that nuts and bolts physics mechanics, and you're like, that's where the development cycles went for those 6 years. It was like the game itself was probably already done in the first year. You know, the narrative team, the systems teams, the content teams and stuff. And then they're like, oh yeah, we've got this insane physics system that anything that's interactive can be made into like a giant cock monster, you know. Like yeah. And we're gonna have a bunch of crucified Corics and stuff, you know, and that has to all be accommodated to. I mean, every one of those things, you know. And you know, in the industry, we have this term in before swastika, which is basically whenever you give the community a means to create something and put it into a game for others to see, it's always got to be something with swastikas and Nazis, or it's always got to be a penis. Like those two things.
That was my second guess.
Yeah. Well, in the workplace, we use the swastika because obviously in before penis would probably make some of the execs. So. But yeah, and it's so true. Like if you ever develop a system where there's player customization, I remember when we were working on that Firefall game and we were doing custom paint jobs. You know, like the idea was that players could actually, if you've ever heard of like Warhammer 40K, you know, the amount of market there is for like a custom legion or a custom army of space marines and tearing with their own armor and stuff. We're
no.
like, yeah, let's do this in Firefall. We can make our own custom shop and blah 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 blah. And it's like, yep, in before swastika, and it's sure enough, it's like you put it in there, and all of a sudden we got this the Sieg Heils or whatever, and it was like, yeah, that's not working. So obviously that system was so scaled back, it eventually just got neutered all completely. But our kind of interim step was we provide pre-made like patterns, like pink camouflage, or no, just camouflage, and then you can apply a color tint to it to make it pink or green or desert or whatever. And that seemed to have been kind of that happy sweet spot. But yeah, when you look at like, I'm fairly certain Nintendo will not ever do anything like they did in Tears of the Kingdom in future games, because I know they like the whole playful matter of Tinker Toys and building things, and approaching it from that childlike let's have fun, because they did that with their cardboard line.
That was just what I was thinking of.
Yeah, they love that distilling games and play back to the very rudimentary aspects of it. But at the same time, I think they understand that it's not going to give them the bang for the buck they hope it will. Because Tears of the Kingdom, like after the honeymoon wore off, a lot of people are like, yeah, the game wasn't as good as Breath of the Wild. There's a lot of people are like, it was awesome, and it was by no means a bad game, but there were a lot of shortcomings that it didn't address that Breath of the Wild kind of excelled at.
Yeah, I think maybe the earliest example I remember seeing this online was probably Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts. It seemed like in record time, Banjo was driving around flying swastikas.
Yep. Yeah, this giant dickmobile straight out of the Idiocracy movie there. The Penetrator, But yeah, the problem with player-created content in a game is that if you can't protect other players from seeing it, then your game will be violated and abused and vandalized, And I know there's oh, it's fun, let's do Minecraft. Yeah, I wonder how many Minecraft levels that Notch there when he first started making it, Mojang or whatever the company was at the time. I wonder how many during their play tests or their public betas or whatever, they got to see like, oh, look, somebody just made Auschwitz or whatever, or look, it's a sex dungeon. Yeah,
what can we create with all of these 90-degree right angles?
Yeah, it's like there is a will, I mean, come on. I mean, look what they did back in Atari days in the 2600. They had Custer's Revenge, like the game was basically trying to dodge arrows to bang an Indian chick, and you play this naked guy with just wearing his cowboy hat and boots, and it was all in like Lego graphics, it was like super rudimentary, but like people, yeah, what is it? Custom creation just leads to depravity. But yeah, I mean, that was kind of what Nintendo veered off to, and I think they'll course correct. I think because a lot of what made Nintendo successful was sticking to what made them successful, and they weren't too like they experimented, but at the same time they understood the foundation needed to be in place before they did their experimentation. Whereas a lot of modern games now are so non-experimental, they're so by the books and so homogenized that everything just feels like it falls into like one of three categories. Either it's a marginally interactive CG film, like most you get like Uncharted or The Last of Us or whatever, where they're like the story. It's like, dude, the story is a reward for your gameplay. If it takes precedence over your gameplay, you're giving your game like less interactivity than a DVD menu. Just make a movie at that point, And then the second one is your free for all, which is you got your online brawls like Fortnite, Apex Legends, those battle royale things. Just throw a bunch of people there and get them to pay money to buy new skins, and then or new map packs or whatever. And then your final one is your open world sandbox, where it's the same game you've played 1,000 times with a new coat of paint. Yeah, and that's where, if it weren't for indies to do all of that free R&D and that free innovation for these risk averse companies to just rip off, we wouldn't have any kind of new games, you know. Hell, last back again 20 years ago, all of the mods that were created for Quake, that were created for Warcraft 3, even Half-Life, all that stuff, which is pretty much Quake. Those games or those mods became fully fledged genres. I mean, if we didn't have Warcraft 3's tower defense thing, or Warcraft 2 actually that started that, then we wouldn't have an entire genre called tower defense. Same thing with the whole concept of the MOBA, the massive online battle arena. That started off as a mod for Warcraft 3 with Defense of the Ancients, or Dota.
Let's see, was there much of like a hero shooter scene before Team Fortress as the Quake mod?
No, that in fact,
That was the
Team
start.
Fortress. That was that whole class.
That was the start of what we know as hero shooters today.
Yeah. I actually got to pick Robin Walker's brains. He was one of the modders. Valve ended up hiring him.
Heck, as I understand, the spy started out as a glitch.
Yeah, the one-shot spy that you could backstab somebody in the face. Man, I liked the original incarnation of the medic, because the medic actually had an extremely dangerous meta that wasn't part of healing. Like, the medic could heal by dropping healing packs or whatever, but the medic's weapon was a low rate of fire needle gun that would shoot a perpetual dot or damage over time on a target, and all the target had to do was cause damage to you to stop the dot. So you would see a lot of like medic snipers who stayed out of the fray, and it was funny when it turned into like hunt the medic, because if you didn't if you didn't get that medic that shot you, you would just have this continuous like bleed of one hit point every like second or so. Just blunk, 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 blunk. So yeah, that entire meta got completely changed when they did Team Fortress 2. Also,
yeah, still got a needle gun, and
yeah,
it's been nerfed.
yeah, it's nothing like what it was in the original. But I remember when Team Fortress 2 was first announced back in the 90s.
It was going to look more realistic.
Yeah, it was all World War II.
It looked like Ghost Recon or something, right?
Yeah, they had like camouflage guys with like foliage on his helmet, and they were parachuting into a map and all this stuff. And it's like, if you've ever played Team Fortress Classic, it actually felt more in line with that. But whatever artistic genius happened over at Valve, where they kind of took a complete aesthetic overhaul of their game. I mean, my hat's off to them, because that completely reinvigorated the long overdue follow up to Team Fortress. So like, they don't even look like they're the same
inverse
game.
of Fuse.
Yeah, it was amazing though. Like, every one of the classes now had a character to them. We had our favorites. It was like, do you want to play the French spy, or the Australian sniper with parent issues, or the psychotic what is it? The psychotic
they're all psychotic.
Well, the flamethrower guy. No. What was it? He's on the phone with his dad, the sniper, and he's like, "No, I'm not a gun-wielding maniac. I'm a professional hitman." What do you mean? The difference being, it's like, one, I'm getting paid to do it, and the other is just a maniac. Put mom on the phone. Like, I love how he's like trying to justify the fact that he murders people on a daily basis. But yeah, just I love the fact that art actually, like the aesthetic actually, contributed a lot to the success of that game, despite the fact that it did have absolutely brilliant like game design function to it. I mean, yeah, that I think Team Fortress 2 kind of defined the team shooter more than its predecessor, because its predecessor was almost overlooked being a mod. Like, you got like your cult following. You had a lot of people that really enjoyed it, but they weren't like mainstream. You know, it's kind of like how Halo kind of brought shooting or shooters into the mainstream, even though there were vastly, there were a lot more games that were first person shooters before Halo, but this was like the first console, like, like science fiction world and whatever. And it blew up once it was released to the public.
Yeah, I guess
Mhm.
another thing that comes to mind I was wanting to mention when you were talking about crossplay
Mhm.
is when I'd see things like the trailer for Quake Enhanced, and for like a couple seconds it just says the words with crossplay. And I look at that and I'm like, oh, that's a neat little feature. But I have this sneaking suspicion that just about every veteran developer just has this sharp, cold breath intake at seeing those two words flash on screen for like 2 seconds, and
Yep.
then it's pain.
Oh God,
And it's
yeah.
sharp pain. Just ooh.
Yeah, especially the Japanese developers or developing for Japanese platforms like the PlayStation, where and again, like you look at the way that Microsoft and Steam handles their games. Uh, a lot of them are publisher based servers or are peer to peer, and peer to peer is basically you're connecting to somebody else's machine that's hosting the game. Which is absolutely odd that Nintendo does that with all of their games, and they're still charging you a monthly fee for that, because that makes no sense. It's like nothing is actually touching Nintendo's servers or anything, and they're charging you money. They're lowering the toll booth or the toll arm. But yeah, the Microsoft servers, they'll actually host their games, so there is a value in their monthly recurring fees, because it's like you're playing a game in a server farm or on some server rack that's like expressly dedicated, to that game, and you're going to get, maximum performance out of it. And the problem is when you go cross platform, now you got to go talk to another server, like, or you've got another protocol that's accessing that same server, which is even screwier. Like somebody walks metaphorically speaking, it's like somebody's trying to get into a speakeasy and they knock on the door and they're like, this little slider opens and it's like, what's the password? And it's like the guy speaks in French and says the password. And they're like, okay, come on in. And then another guy comes up to him and knocks on the door and he's like, what's the password? And the guy speaks in Japanese and you're like, oh God. And that's basically how making a cross-platform game over multiple platforms. Very, very simplified way of saying it, but like that's a massive headache, because there are so many different ways they handle rollback or latency, or if you've ever seen testing of multiplayer experiences with different levels of ping and simulated latency, suddenly things start getting really screwy, where like you shot and killed somebody on your screen, but on their screen they haven't even seen you appear yet, and yet they shot you because you're just standing there celebrating the victory of the guy that they killed, which was you, but you didn't die on your machine. Yeah, you get all sorts of weird desyncs.
Or I guess another thing I could picture, someone on like Xbox 360 harassing players and Sony can't do anything about it.
Yeah. well, that generally become like my thing about the whole net nanny thing that really bothers me is that, again, growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, like I mean, I've been on this from ground floor. You always had a block button, or you always had a mute option, or you even, and again, going back to the Xbox infrastructure, they always had like they actually had a system where they could say the only people that you can hear and talk to are people on your friends list. And it's like, that's all you need. It's a pretty simple, what I mean? It's a simple solution. And now we're seeing things where we've got developers that are assuming this parental role over games, where they're like, so and so harassed so and so on this game and they got their account banned or whatever. And it's like, okay, that is dumb on so many levels. First being from a financial perspective, you just lost a customer by banning this guy. Yeah, sure, he might want to buy another game so he can harass somebody else, But it could be, you know, the more likelihood is he's like, well, F this. I'm just not going to play this game anymore. You know, so you lost that customer. And then the other thing is it's like they're talking about monitoring with AI and stuff, like forbidden words and all this stuff in text chats and stuff. And it's like, why not?
Oh,
Yeah, just why
I've
not
been
just
hearing horror stories about that with just like people who just speaking other languages get instantly banned because certain words, innocuous words in their language, sound like something dirty in English.
yeah, like in China, Mandarin Chinese, they have a filler word. You know how we have words like and stuff like that. In Mandarin Chinese, they have the N bomb. Yeah, it's spelled differently. There's only one G and it ends in an A, but it sounds exactly like what you think it sounds like. And yeah, the first time I heard that, I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. Oh, okay. But yeah, yeah. But I just find that whole over like it's just an overreach. It just feels like we already have solutions in place, and if anything, if people really like if you know because like things like the ESRB have been a complete failure in my opinion. Like you heard the whole story of the Entertainment Software Ratings Bureau, right?
Oh, it's bureau. I thought it was board.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. It could be board. Yeah, I think it is. I always just call it ESRB, but you know, just I have this nasty habit of making sure that when I say abbreviations, I hope everybody else knows what they are because I work in cybersecurity, and half the time people are like, what is it? An MFA, P2P, MSP, you know? And they're like, care to speak English? But
I
yeah,
somehow find myself doing the opposite a lot. Like, oh, that game over there, that's called the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim.
yeah, to the TES, yeah. But yeah, so the ESRB is a failure in the sense that it thought it had too much faith in people and didn't realize how stupid and lazy parents were and how irresponsible they were. So after the bored housewives of politicians back in the early 90s flipped out over Night Trap and Mortal
Just
Kombat
what
and
I
all
was thinking of. A Night Trap. I was going to say
yeah,
that.
Dana Plato's last media thing. Yeah. After that whole freaking debacle, rather than having the government step in and be a big brother and censor games, the game industry decided to censor themselves or at least rate themselves in a sense so that they would create the ESRB. There's also in Europe, they have PEGI. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but PEGI is basically a ratings board equivalent of what the ESRB is here in the United States and Mexico and Canada.
Yeah, I've got
And
one. Somehow I ended up with a foreign copy of Sonic Adventure, and it works just fine.
nice. But like, they basically elected themselves to rate their own games. And the problem though was, parents didn't care. So like, 8-year-old Billy still wants Grand Theft Auto, even though they're according to the ESRB, it's an M-rated game and not suitable for anybody under the age of 15 or 16. So mommy buys him this game and then flips her wig and goes, dude, my kid just saw, tits and heard the F-bomb and all this stuff. And I'm going to sue Take-Two Interactive for this game. Rockstar Entertainment is, they've illegally sold this game to kids. And it's like, lady, it literally says right on it. And there's a sticker there, and they don't care, and there's no enforcement at the stores, because GameStop, they want to make money, the online marketplaces, they want to make money. So
did they drop it? Because I definitely remember being asked for ID to buy M-rated games before, like Batman Arkham Knight and whatnot. I definitely remember that one.
Yeah, it is. So it is.
It just kind of stopped when they started recognizing me.
Well, the problem though
I don't know what happened.
Yeah, it's not. Excuse me. It's not universally enforced. It's a suggestion. It's kind of like a kid going into an R-rated movie. like some theaters are like, yeah, whatever, kid, get in there, give me your money. Whereas some would be like, I need to see some ID before you can go in, or you need a parental guide, because like PG literally means parental guidance suggested, meaning you should go in with your parent to see this movie. And it's like, I've seen a lot of kids just pop in, especially back in the 80s, just watch a movie by themselves. But yeah, so with that whole system failed. And you're seeing 10-year-old, like, you're playing like Call of Duty and stuff. Again, they're M-rated game, or at least the online, I believe, is rated M, because you got bullets and blood and all that stuff. And they're like, there's 8-year-olds on the voice chat, calling you every racial slur in the book, and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, so clearly allowing people to regulate themselves didn't work. And that's what they're doing now with the multiplayer stuff too, where it's like, what they should do is just have the only people that you can talk to and hear are people on your friends list. That should be on by default. And I think that would solve.
Wasn't that just already the norm when this stuff was in its infancy?
Well, no, actually, it was free for all, but you had that option. Like, there was an option in the original Xbox Live experience where you could opt into saying only talk to my friends or only communicate with my friends, which I'm fully in support of. Like, if you want to like walk into a little closet or walk into a little room and be in your safe space essentially online with just your buddies, I'm all set. Like, I'm totally cool with that, because that's you electing to do that with your own players. But it's
feels
now
like
what's up?
Feels like, I guess, a lot of headache could have been resolved if that was just the default setting.
I agree. But no, now we got to have people's accounts being banned because somebody said a bad word, or, somebody harassed somebody because they're making fun of how dumb they were in the game or whatever. And it's like, guys, like, this is why we're losing customers. Like, this is why people are just getting sick of games. Like, we're actually, a lot of people aren't talking about it because they don't want to say the loud parts or the quiet parts out loud. But like, if you ever look at websites like LinkedIn, or read game news sites that aren't Kotaku or Polygon, you'll understand what's actually happening with this industry. Thousands upon thousands of game developers are losing their jobs now. We are going into a crash if we are not already in one. The likes of which, the last time this happened, ET was driven out to a Mexican landfill, or a New Mexican landfill, and dropped off by the boatloads. Yeah, when you start seeing entire studios just vanish in a blip, yeah, it's definitely cause for concern. And I don't think, because a lot of people were artificially elevated to decision-making positions without actually having the experience or understanding of some of these businesses, I think we're starting to see kind of the impact of that. We're starting to see things like putting in anti-consumer practices, the whole turn players into payers, and the, let's play net nanny with all the online stuff so that we can curb speech that we don't like, and all that. All that's doing is it's driving your customer base away, and it's creating like either a renaissance for indie games that don't play by those rules, or it's making people look over to like emulation and retro games. Sorry, I'm long-winded. I rant.
I don't know. No, this stuff is fascinating. I've been wanting to hear the quiet parts out loud for so long. Like, this is the stuff I gotta know.
Dude, it's scary. It's real scary, man. I knew that game development as an industry was volatile. As the longest I held a job in the gaming industry, or like a single studio, I think was 3 years, to almost 3 years, and that was the longest. And the shortest was like 7 months. And my first experience in game development was meeting some guys at the Game Developers Conference in San Jose, where it was at the time. And hitting it off with them. They were starting up their own game company, and we got a startup and blah, 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 blah. We got capital, and we got a publisher, Namco, before it became Bandai Namco. Like, Namco's funding American games, and they want to get in on the American market and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, so I packed up everything I had and moved literally from one end of the country to the other. I was on opposite coasts. I went from the East Coast to California. And before my stuff even arrived from the movers to this new destination, the company lost its publisher. Namco just decided on a whim that their games that they were producing were garbage and they weren't making the money they wanted. So they just pulled out and they decided to leave, our startup company. They just freaking left us high and dry. And if it weren't for the Red 5 Studios there that were trying to basically leverage the engine that one of the founders of the now publisher free company had created, he was basically trying to economically incentivize him to sell the engine to him, because the engine was amazing, and at the time it was better than the Unreal Engine, or at least it had features that the Unreal Engine didn't have at the time. And if it weren't for that Red 5 Studios, I would have been, along with several other developers, would have been just homeless, or at the very least, I would have been flying back to New England trying to get my job back at the newspaper. But that's just how volatile though the industry was. And it's real good for some 20-something who doesn't have any responsibilities other than maybe a student loan and a car payment, maybe, who can hop around apartment to apartment, or they lose their job in 2 years working somewhere, or a year, they can just hop over to another company with their buddies, or network and socialize and just go from company to company every few years. That's totally fine. The problem though is when you start getting into your 30s and 40s and maybe even your 50s, which is extremely rare, you start thinking about things like family or retirement or sustainability for employment, and suddenly that amazing dream career industry that you thought of in your 20s is now looking like something that's not a very viable career option in your 30s and 40s. I've witnessed people dying. I've witnessed, well, not personally dying, but have died because of health related issues of working in the industry. I've had almost a lot of people actually got divorced. A lot of game developers were actually single because there's no work-life balance in game development. Or they're going out with their coworkers, which is a huge no-no.
Yeah, I guess that gets me thinking about everything from like 7th console generation, all the studios just abruptly, unanimously decided no more turn-based RPGs, no more horror games, all the way down to think about something like id Software, how I'm pretty sure none of the developers of the original Doom are there anymore for one reason or another. And I think maybe probably the person who's still there, who has been there the longest, might be, I think it was Tim Willits. He joined for Ultimate Doom, and I think working on 2 of the levels, and I think he's still there.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah, I know when John Carmack left, because essentially there was a core team that made id Software what id Software was back in the day. And when the core team goes, the soul of the company goes with it. I mean, look at Blizzard. Yeah. Man, yeah, I can't speak too much on id Software because I don't know any of them personally. But I know the Blizzard company, when you have people like Rob Pardo, who is very influential in game design. He's not even and that's the thing, is he wasn't even some college educated, brainy academic. Like this was like a high school kid. I think he even dropped out, who just like loved games and knew his shit. And he knew what a fun core game loop was and how to make money off of it. And when he left, it was like, yeah, you could feel his loss in some of the newer games. And then Mike Morhaime, the head of Blizzard, left, one of the founders. Then you had Chris Metzen, who was like the soul of Warcraft. When he's gone, yeah, it's the writing's on the wall.
So yeah, I guess it's sounding like you've kind of dipped out of the field more or less.
Yeah, I mean, it sucks because I love, like, for a while, like I was really depressed after I had left. When I had my dream career blow up in my face and I was living out of my car and I was freaking homeless. I was like, screw this industry, blah 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 blah, and I hated video games and all this stuff. And then I realized, like, I actually thought I was growing out, or I had just lost interest in gaming in general. But it wasn't that. It was, I just don't like a lot of newer games because of the paradigms that they've, inflicted, where they have a corporate boardroom decide game, creative decisions rather than actual creative people. So like I love old school retro games like the PS2, PS3 era. Love that stuff. But I've noticed that as the generations of consoles got newer, I bought fewer and fewer games for them. And I don't even
returns.
Yeah, and I don't even own a PS5 or an Xbox Series X. I have no interest in buying either of those. There's no exclusive killer app on either of those.
Yeah, I don't have any of those. Like, I guess the latest I have is a PS4 Pro, unless you count my my computer I'm using for all this right now. I got it like maybe a couple years ago or so. So I don't really know hardware all that thoroughly. I had some help getting it, selecting it. Supposedly, the specs are high enough that it can apparently run like Doom Eternal 5 times over, supposedly.
Nice.
At least with not counting the ray tracing updates and stuff. But
yeah, real-time reflections.
Very helpful. I maintained the same. I skipped Windows 8 entirely. I maintained the same Windows 7 desktop for 14 years. I kept that thing running until it just broke. I ran that thing into the ground. I just kept going until it could not turn on anymore.
I still have a laptop running Windows 7. That was a good operating system, dude. Or at least in comparison. Windows 8 was garbage, man. It was like a mobile interface they were trying to create to compete with Apple. They were trying to make an integrated single operating system for their mobile and desktop devices, and it failed miserably. That whole Metro thing, yeah, no thanks.
But yeah, I guess I've always wanted to, like, after everything that the industry was putting you through, I've always wondered about asking something like this to anyone in your kind of position. What would it ever take if you were to somehow go back to developing?
Oh, that's a tough one. I mean, wow, that is a tough one, because a lot of people, when they get into the industry, think that they're getting into the industry to make their game, and that's never the case. Some of the most seasoned veterans I know that are game designers, it's funny. Like I'm working on the Defiance game, and the guy that's teaching me is this freaking amazing, like, font of knowledge. This guy has seen everything, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I came over from blah 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 studio. We just got off making the last Bratz game." I'm like, "The what?"
Oh,
yeah, like made like Barbie horse adventures and Bratz and stuff.
And I remember hearing about that with like with Iga when he finally got so fed up with Konami forcing him onto dating sim after dating sim, and then he finally came out with Bloodstained.
Yeah, well, that's the thing is, You
They
know,
had
like,
no idea what to do with them. They were so out of touch.
well, that's the problem though, is like, you know, the as the saying goes, you'll be working for an idiot unless you're working for yourself. Um, when you work for a game studio, you're not making your game, you're making their game. They hired you because you have a certain set of skills to make me a nightmare. No, you have a skill set that they need to make their game. So even though you have all these great ideas and aspirations for something, it doesn't matter because it's their product and you're just being hired to work on their product. So I did that. I just lucked out. Like every game that I worked on, I freaking played the shit out of and I loved. Like that very first game that I got hired to work on was called Project Offset. It didn't even have, it was just a working title. And it was it was based very loosely, its gameplay anyways, was based on a game called Savage, which was like a real-time strategy game that you played in the first person and or third person when you went into close quarters combat, or it's like the incorrect term melee, where you pulled out a sword, your character, you could see him over the shoulder in third person. But that was where this startup came from, was a bunch of these developers from Savage wanted to make their own game. And they, you know, I gave them a pitch for my stuff as a narrative designer, and they hired me on the spot. Well, not on the spot. Actually, it took about 6 months to get all the logistics of getting me moved over there and stuff.
Bit of a
But
gap there.
yeah, but there was a lot of like back and forth where it was like, yeah, we want you, we just don't know if we can pay you, you know. And when they finally were able to do that, um, it was essentially like I was making my game. So I felt kind of spoiled where I gave them a narrative pitch and they pitched back, you know, this isn't, you know, you get the Hulk Hogan, that's not going to work for me, brother. Where it was like, okay, we need this. We want to have these aspects in the game. And it turned into a very collaborative team effort. But at the same time, I loved that project. You know, I got to work on story elements for the different characters. We even developed the way the game was being made in something called parallel storytelling, where you've got two sides of the same war being told from the multiple protagonists' perspective, where one side you're playing the guys that are raiding a village, on the other side, later on, you're playing as a guy defending that same village being raided by the player you just played as. You know, like it was an amazing experience. But
Like,
you know,
man, what
again,
else is like that? Like the Avatar game or Sonic Adventure 2, or did this go further than that?
oh yeah, this had a story mode. Um, and then once you got past the story mode, you know, for unlocks, like, you know, you treated the story mode as a means to build your character, and then you get into the or to train the player how each of the character classes work, because at its core it was basically a hero based shooter, or hack and slasher, depending on how you treated your character. But the single player was designed to give you a coherent story, but train you how to use each class. And then when you got into the multiplayer, you got to play, like, the maps opened up and you got these bigger, like, I think it was like 32 players that we were thinking about at one point, where you basically fought these bigger battles that were referenced in the single player that you didn't actually see, or only saw small snippets of. And you know, we developed this huge narrative, this huge world building exercise all around it. You know, one of the guys that was I worked with on the story team ended up going over to Marvel as a concept artist. He designed the the Wakandan whatever guards outfits and stuff. And yeah, we like had a blast throwing ideas off each other and getting like our story or our game in there. It was a giant like salad of everybody's ideas, and I thought it was going to be great. But finances and a bunch of immature people who never, you know, you got kids basically given millions of dollars, and they squandered it and did bad stuff with it. And that's why we're not playing Project Offset or whatever it became, because all sorts of bad decisions were made. And fortunately, I was able to jump ship. That's when I started learning that you have to monkey branch in the gaming industry. Like you don't go to a game company and expect to retire there. You're not going to sink 10 years in there. Like you hear the stories over in Blizzard where they're like, yeah, at 5 years you get a sword, at 10 years you get a shield, at 20 years you get a suit of armor or whatever. I don't know. I'm making this shit up, but like you get like different props or whatever based on your milestones or your anniversaries. And that's a very odd rarity in Western game development, especially in the AAA, as they call it, because people don't get.
I have been hearing about that. It's like implementing like gotcha systems into the workplace.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's just
all right. Time for your daily unlock.
Well, they don't like. There's no concept or even desire for talent retention in Western game development. Like in Japanese game development, nobody gets fired. You just get like soft laid off or like quiet. What do they call it? Quiet. No, hold on. Constructive restructuring or something. No, constructive dismissal. That's the legal term for it. Where they basically give you a shitty enough job that they make you want to quit your job. You get demoted, essentially. You're eventually the guy in the, excuse me, that's my red stapler. They stick them in a closet somewhere, but they don't fire you. You quit on your own volition. You can build your way out of that by, trying to get back into the good graces by doing good things. But more or less, once you get to that level, it means the company doesn't want anything to do with you. Whereas here in the West, you could look at a mouse could fart in the office and you're fired. Like, the winds changed and suddenly you're let go. Like when I worked at that Tryon Worlds, I had a boss that one of the guys that hired me, he was the head of design, and they just shit canned him one day. And we're all like, what happened? He was a good guy. What did he do wrong? They're like, oh, well, they weren't making performance or like we weren't making deadlines or something. So they needed somebody to blame. So they threw it on him and boom, he's out. Yeah. So to get back to the question of what would it take for me to ever get interested to go back in game development, I would probably say from a purely selfish perspective, I would probably have to have a lot of money, like FU funds, a FU bank account, where if things went south, I could have the leverage to be like, well, I've got the finances. So, I'm either this is what we're doing for a game or I'm out. Or I don't know. Honestly, that's a real tough one to answer because it took me 10 years to finally leave to let go, to stop swimming upstream in game development after, the homelessness, the moving around. Like I've been moved to different countries to work. Your social life doesn't exist unless it's the people that you work with. Your sleep schedule, your work-life balance is destroyed. All of that, and then the other thing is that nobody talks about is every creative industry attracts a lot of assholes, more so than normal industries. And I hate to say it, but like I've leveraged my skills in UX and web design and have left a creative industry for a non-creative industry. And it was like night and day. It was like, oh my God, none of my coworkers are trying to stab me in the back to step on me or devalue me or, get in the better graces to, climb the corporate ladder, or people actually saw my position as valuable instead of, why do we have this person here? He can't code. I can do it myself. Like in game design, you are the most hated department in all of game development. Game designers, they don't exist anymore to begin with. I mean, if you look at what is considered a game designer today, they're either an economist, they're a programmer, or they're somebody that like has taken a game from like a game design from like 30 years ago and is a great office politician and has convinced people that, that's how they're going to make their game, when it's like, dude, you literally just made Fortnite, So sorry. I know I ramble.
No, this is what I came for. I like I said, I want to hear the quiet parts out loud.
Yeah, I hate to talk people out of game development, but I would honestly say that if you want to make your game, don't go into game development. Don't go into AAA. Like, I want to go work for Blizzard. I want to go, like, that was me. I wanted to go work for Blizzard. Yeah, I didn't have a snowball's chance in hell of getting there. But or some other AAA company or whatever. What I think you should do is, even if you're not the engineer or not the whatever, I'm the story guy or stuff like that. No, go and be an engineer. Go and study computer science, learn an engine, learn a programming language, and then find like-minded people who also are interested in that in communities based on things like the Godot or Unity or Unreal Development Kit or whatever, and collaborate. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself very jaded. Like, the industry is designed to chew up naive 20 somethings and shit out bitter 40 somethings. It's not about making your game. It's actually a lot not very fun to make games either. Like, there's this, this like false sense that I've seen a lot of times where the commercials for those predatory game design schools where they're like, tighten up the graphics on level 3. This is so fun. It's like, no, it isn't. Like, you're at work at midnight on a Friday because you're in a crunch that's lasted like 9 months because of poor planning from your inept production or producers. And now you got to retest the same level and there's a bug and you can't find it because it's not in the code. It's actually in some GUI that was in, part of the proprietary engine that your developers or your engineers gave to the designers, and then you got engineers telling you that you suck as a game designer and that their ideas are better. And it's like, that's a subjective thing. Like, it's our customer who tells us if we're good or bad, all this stuff, and it's just, I would say to anybody that wants to get into game development, get a software development background, something in engineering, and that, I hate to say learn to code, but learn to code and then build your own and make money that way, because you're not going to make money in the AAA industry. I was paid horribly compared to what I was like. Again, once I left the entertainment creative industry, my pay reflected my departure in a very good way. My stability, I'm looking on LinkedIn and all of my former colleagues have had 3, 4, 5, 6 jobs since the 9 years I've been at the same company. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here, so just unbox everything.
Yeah, I know. I have a terrible economy of words, but that's basically, if you want to get into game development, do the garage style. Do the what the indies do. Don't pursue the big AAAs. Those dinosaurs are dying. They've creatively stagnated because they've turned everything into an anti-consumer service rather than what created the industry that it was, what it became, 20 years ago when we had community created content like mods.
Yeah, I guess, man, one thing that pops into my head is the multitude of big blockbuster sequels in like 2004, and how nowadays, nearly 20 years later, you don't really get that. You just get updates.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's all about efficiency. You've got a bunch of bean counters. You've got a boardroom that's dictating creative decisions now. And everything is being optimized to maximize the amount of money taken from a customer and the minimum amount of money it takes for these developers to invest in their products. And what's really sad is the budgets on these games, these AAA games, are so bloated because of 3 things, and it has nothing to do with the game. First one is they have a bunch of these overpaid jackasses that have absolutely no value in the company. Like, most of your upper management and middle management are freaking worthless. You got 3 people standing around watching one guy work. Those 2 of those 3 people can go. So there's that. Like, these guys, like these CEOs, like what was it? I remember reading about Bobby Kotick made like record profits
no,
or whatever.
not him.
Yeah, and then he laid off 800 employees. It's like Activision Blizzard's had record profits this year, and we're going to lay off 800
players
people.
Pay for bullets.
Yeah, exactly. Like these are things that like, you know, like are ballooning these budgets though, but at the same time are pissing players off. So you got that, and then you got the Hollywood angle, which really pisses me off. Like nobody gives a crap that you've got freaking Megan Fox in your Mortal Kombat game. She sounds like ass, dude. Like it sounds terrible. Like you could have gotten a lot cheaper, non-freaking Hollywood voice actor. Hell, you could go on Fiverr.
Which actually they kind of did. There's a separate voice actress who just does all the yells and grunts.
Yeah, and they sound so much better. But like, yeah, they just wanted to get the brand, the Hollywood brand of Megan Fox in their Mortal Kombat game. They did that with Ronda Rousey in the previous one. And all I can think of
2009 anymore.
Well, all I can think of is that show The Critic, where they had this like one little scene where there's like an actress who's like, "Oh no, Prometheus," you know, and he's like, "That's Prometheus," and like the whole skit was like it was showing like how terrible like hot chicks who can't act, but they were pushed in there because they're banging the director or whatever, and like that's what Hollywood is they're the ones banging the director essentially, like their names, their likenesses, their brand or whatever cost so much money because they think that that's what makes these games great. And it's like, no, like nobody cares. Like you could have had some no-name actor that you got off a Fiverr could have done a better job, you know? And then the third and final thing is the actual marketing budgets are absolutely insane. I mean, it took for a 1-minute video. I actually priced this out with the guys over at Blur Studios. Blur Studios are the ones that make all those pre-rendered, gorgeous promotional videos of games and stuff. And it was like $1.something million a minute for a or actually it might have even been less than that. I think it was less than a minute for their trailer. So we're like, you know, when we were working on the Assassin's Creed game, it was, you know, how can we could we get, you know, in our budget, could we get a trailer for this Assassin's Creed game that we're working on? And they're like, yeah, it'll cost you blah 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 blah. We're like, that's literally more than our budget for the entire game. So yeah, they throw in these budgets that for marketing that's bigger than the game. Meanwhile, the game has almost no budgets given to it because all of the people working on these games, like some of these like designers aren't paid shit unless you're like upper, like a senior level or a like a lead designer. You're not getting paid shit, dude.
Yeah, it gets me thinking of like how it feels like such an anomaly with what Call of Duty is now by like not changing at all really with instead of just updating a game over and over again. I guess they're kind of maybe starting to get into that, but like they're still doing the yearly releases thing, and in order to maintain that, they have to have 3 developers. What is it? Infinity Ward, Treyarch, and now the new guy Sledgehammer, just in a revolving door.
Yep.
And I guess what's as some kind of weird segue, kind of reminds me of now we got a third guy too. Hey,
how's it going, man?
Hey, how's it
Sorry
going,
for
man?
the late show up, but let's just say work was chaos.
Oh,
Yeah, how you guys doing?
I think I just
you know, just hearing the war journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, from what I understand, you know, you and I we're kind of on the brand new indie side of this. Chris is the war-hardened veteran here.
Yeah, I'm the non-vet. I'm the guy in the wheelchair with the missing legs.
Lieutenant Dan.
You're the one with tank controls.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, it's honestly, I do apologize for showing up late. I kept looking at the 4 p.m. and I kept blanking out EST. I forget that I'm mountain time sometimes.
Oh, what's that? Is that 3 hours behind?
It's about 2.
So what's Central Time then? Central's 1.
So basically it's Western time, coastal time, California time, whatever you want to call it. Then it is mountain time. Then it's central, and then I believe it's Eastern Standard.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I've always got to be extra clarified about that because I even once brought in someone in from all the way from Japan who had to get up at 5 in the morning.
Oh, I bet that was exciting. But I mean, to be fair, I've been to Japan, so I understand the time difference more than a lot of average Americans do.
Man, yeah, I miss living in Tokyo, man. That was such a beautiful city.
Funny that you mentioned that, but actually, this year I went to Kyoto, their cultural capital. I'm hoping that with a little bit of extra work and some really smart saving, I can go to Tokyo next year.
Yeah, Tokyo was, it's weird because I've always like when you're there working, you don't have the time to be full on tourist. And there are so many aspects of Japan that you can easily access. It just takes, a little bit of time with their transit system because they have those amazing trains.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a lot less driving. I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, essentially, Japan's public transit system is utterly inconceivable to your average American as to how phenomenally amazing it is. Because you've got the because it's basically like 3 or 4 layers of public transportation that is available very cheaply.
Well, that and the user experience for it is designed for people who don't speak Japanese. So even Baka Gaijin, Kichikubehe can walk in, or Dirty American Devil could walk into Japan in this transit system and fully understand, oh, this is where I buy the tickets, and this is how I get on the train. And they
absolutely.
All of the train's messaging is all spoken in English. So it's like, next stop,
it's both Japanese and English. So basically, it covers the biggest swath of languages that's going to generally enter Japan on a semi-regular basis.
Yeah.
I think the only people who ever complain about Japan's only 2 languages being present, being Japanese and English, are the Kurds. But to be fair, the Kurds cause a lot of trouble in Japan, so I can't really.
Yeah,
I can't really complain for them.
Well, you heard about that nuisance Johnny Somali, right?
Yeah, and he kept claiming he was from America, and no, he's not from America. He's not even from New York.
Well, that piece of crap, like it took him long enough, but finally, the Tokyo PD grabbed him for trespassing on a construction site. They're like, finally, he broke a law. We can actually arrest him. And they had him for 30 days in jail. And Japan has like a 99% conviction rate.
Yeah.
So once you're in the court system, you're going to be
done.
Yeah, and they're like, you're going to spend 3 years in prison, and then we are going to cannonball your ass off this archipelago.
And not only that, they basically perma-ban them from ever being able to come in. And even though, Japanese surveillance systems are thankfully not anywhere near as Orwellian as China's, they can still pick you out in a crowd because most of the people they boot off the archipelago are not Nihonjin.
Yeah. And honestly, like I hate to sound like a super weeb, but I have a great concerns about Japanese culture being invaded and destroyed the way Western cultures have been recently.
Honestly,
And
you don't even have to be a weeb to really think that, because a lot of my Japanese friends are very much on that front line of we need to, protect and preserve Japanese culture from corruption. It's just one of those
oh,
things where it's like, oh, hey, it's,
oh, sorry.
oh yeah, no, it's fine. It's basically, with the sheer amount of influx of non-compatible immigrants, or people who refuse to assimilate to Japanese culture, it's
Mhm.
completely and utterly understandable.
Yeah, I just, again, I lived there, and I would walk the streets at like 2 a.m. down alleyways in the dark to where I lived, and I felt safe. I got off the train, nobody gave me trouble. I, again, foreigner in a foreign city, and Tokyo was one of the world's most populous cities, and nobody gave me any trouble. The place was clean. There were no, let's just say that you're not going to get mugged there. And I come back to the States and I'm like, why can't we have that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it if I were to leave my home in the Rocky Mountains, I would most likely choose Japan to live in, not only because I'm just absolutely gobsmack in love with the culture and the people. They're just they're very endearing people,
Mm.
but the sheer amount of safety, even as a daikokujin, was unprecedented. I literally could wander around in some of the most rundown parts of Kyoto and not feel any amount of danger, because they're only run down because they're just old.
Yeah,
It's not
like older
particularly
than this
high
country.
crime, and the actual criminals, the yakuza and your local Yankee gangs, they're not going to cause trouble for you so long as you don't stick out and you don't pick a fight.
Man. I mean, every culture has its flaws. There are parts of Japanese culture I wasn't really fond of, but at the same time, I don't want to see that culture go away.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
the invasion of like all the garbage that we're seeing, these Johnny Somalis, these obnoxious like vloggers and all this stuff, like I really hope Japan starts adopting a zero tolerance policy for that, because some of the stuff that I've seen where like Johnny Somali's playing hentai sounds of like a little girl getting banged or whatever, and he's playing it on a subway filled with like little school aged kids, like probably about maybe 8 years old, 9 years old.
Or, him randomly screaming Nagasaki, Hiroshima, and we destroyed you, and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, dude, not only are you just opening old wounds and pissing off the public, you're not doing all you're doing is making your position and everybody else's position infinitely worse. You're basically coming around from the back end saying, haha, I bought a house in Japan, so now none of you can buy a house in Japan because now everybody else hates you because of me.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. If you're a representative of a country, you're gonna make what good impression, bad impression, whatever that is, that affects everybody else of that country you're representing.
Exactly. Which is why I despise the fact that he claims he's American, because he's not.
Where's he from?
He's from Africa. He emigrated from Africa to the United States.
Mhm.
He became a green card carrier for the United States, but he was never fully citizenized. He was never fully naturalized.
Oh, damn.
And he had a place in New York. And then he moved from New York and bought one of those free houses in Japan, which was why he was there and why he was always claiming, "Oh, I'm American," all that kind of stuff. He's not. He was certainly he came through America, but he was never American.
Yeah, that sucks. Man. Sorry, we derailed over to
Weebish.
the glorious Nippon.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's like Ken Akamatsu, who's been really big about raising awareness of this sort of thing in Japan. The Love Hina not actor, author,
Yeah, the
who's
creator of Love
gotten into
Hina.
politics.
Yeah, like, dude, you saw what happened to Shinzo Abe, right?
Oh, absolutely. Oh, regrettably so. Yeah.
And I think that had to do a lot with the incursions of Western influences.
Well, I
Like,
mean, Shinzo Abe was one of the strongest PMs that Japan ever had.
yeah. And, the guy that took him out, like Japan has a very strict anti-gun law, the whole, is it Namban ban or whatever. But the fact that this guy could build a gun out of like 2x4s and like whatever, and he like got this guy up there and took him out, and it's like, why would he do it? You know what I mean? In all the years, we've never seen anything like this. What happened? And I guarantee you, it's because of certain political influences from the West. And I'll say it's one bird on that wing.
Was he the one whose killer was misidentified as Hideo Kojima?
Yes. Yeah, he was misidentified as Hideo Kojima, and officially on paper, he might have been pushed further by either China or the West, but his main reason for assassinating Shinzo Abe, and he's gone on record admitting as much, he hated the fact that Shinzo was part of the Moonies that had basically sent his mother out on the streets and in his mind killed her. That was his reasoning. Now, what was it proper for him to, assassinate Shinzo Abe for something that Shinzo probably had no idea as to why this happened or had no real hand in it? No, but that's the kind of world we live in, unfortunately.
Yeah, my biggest issue with a lot of the policies in Japan were what contribute to the hikikomori, because that's where your infertility is coming from. When you've got people of varying ages that choose to isolate themselves and not, they just check out of society entirely. That's basically what a hikikomori are people that just check out of society altogether. They have remote jobs. They never leave their apartments. I watched this documentary where they die, and it was so heartbreaking watching all of their collections and all of their photos and everything just get thrown out because they have no next of kin.
Yeah, well, I mean, honestly, we're seeing that being imported over into the West.
Yep.
Along with the other major Japanese problem, which is the kairaku.
How so?
I'm not going to get into the full dissertation of it, but I'm assuming you know what a kairaku is at least.
But the bird?
No, it's the Japanese word for conglomerate.
Oh, karakuen, yeah.
And we're seeing the conglomerates form here in America, the most notable right now being Amazon, actually.
Sounds like Kraken.
Release the Karuken.
But we're also seeing a lot of hikikomoriism, especially now after COVID-19, after the Xi Jinping plague. But we're seeing a lot of that now, and so a lot of Americans are like, oh yeah, that this is not our problem. It absolutely is, and it's in our best interest to not only solve it here in our own nation, but also to help solve it in Japan, because Japan is our main ally in the East. And I'm trying not to get political about all this because it's very easy to dive into that. But I mean, if you want to look at the people who caused the lost half century in Japan, we are the ones who, well, maybe not you, Chris, but we Americans were. We were afraid of the Japanese economic miracle, and we crushed their currency
Oh
because
yeah.
of it. And they never recovered from basically the cloak and dagger economic warfare that we waged on our own ally.
Well, their smallest new denomination now, the yen, is like $1. And or I should say it's 100 yen is the smallest coin that you can get.
Yeah.
So it's like $1, 100 yen. Bam, there you go. Like there's no 50 cents. There's no like it's kind of happening in America too with the Biden inflation, where like it costs more to make a penny than the value of the penny itself. So
Yeah.
there's no reason for any denomination below certain parts of our currency. Like, do we really have any value? Can you buy anything in this world for a quarter?
No, well, I mean, honestly, for those who are smart enough and, collected their coins, the coins are either one more worthwhile as a collector's item, because there are some coins out there that at this point are worth like hundreds of or even thousands of dollars.
Mhm.
But even just the scrap metal of the coins are worth more.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's like those weird scoring systems, like, oh, you eat one pack dot, you get 10 points.
Man.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
tying that back into gaming, so I no longer derail us, but it's kind of like the whole microtransaction system in games, where you never have one microtransaction. You have a set economy of 6 or 7 different microtransactions that all don't interact with each other, but all have some form of base pay value that you have to earn, and they all earn at different rates.
Yeah, different currencies. Yeah, you have the in-game currency you can earn, or you have the currency that you can only get from using real-world cash, or combination of the two, or yeah.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where, it's honestly one of the statements I'd love to kind of put out there is gaming is in a very paradoxical position, in which we have never had a better fiscal year for video games ever in gaming history at all, bar none. The gaming industry is making way more money now than it could have ever possibly dreamed, but the quality is at its absolute lowest. We're so basically, it's making the most money that it has in all of time, ever since its inception. But the quality that goes into those earnings make it the absolute worst year for gaming, for those who are looking for, actual meaning and actual art in their video games.
Yeah. Well, I was saying earlier, I I'm not very optimistic of the current industry as it stands after seeing the signs. If we are not approaching that ET in the New Mexican landfill crash that we experienced back in like 83, then we're already in it. And indicators are already showing this with things like the record number of layoffs and studio closures. Nobody wants to talk about it, but
Rising number of studios that can just go under after just one bomb.
yeah, like I think the industry, I think we're going to see a massive secession of studios and games in general. I don't think we're going to get the 10,000 games a year the way we're seeing on Steam now, or like we're basically going to get like one game every year or every few years, and the number of studios are going to either consolidate or just be reduced, because it's not sustainable. The industry is run by people who don't like their product. the anti-consumer stuff, the net nanny stuff that we were talking about earlier, the dearth of creativity, the recycling of products has become so like much of a turnoff to customers that things like the retro gaming renaissance, emulations, indie games, like little bite-sized games, distraction games on your mobile devices, like those are taking off now, and they're the mammals of the extinction of the dinosaurs, which are the big AAAs.
Oh, absolutely. And I know this sounds bad, but hear me out here. I honestly believe that because of the way gaming is, the West has two major problems with its more artistic endeavors, and I'll touch on that a little bit later. But I honestly believe that a reduction or consolidation of those studios and of that talent is much, much needed. There's way too much bloat
Oh yeah.
in gaming today. Not only just in the fact that we're seeing way too many releases year on year that financially and just temporally speaking, nobody can keep up with, but also it's just one of those things where every single man is trying to build his own castle, and unfortunately it's not working out. But the other major issue is, alongside animation and touching on another channel's particular ground, comic books, video games, this whole trifecta is viewed not as art, not as high art or as a medium, but more as a domestic comestible. So something to be consumed and thrown away, which is also why we see record lows of preservation of all time in the space.
Oh yeah, yeah. Games are definitely viewed as disposable. When it takes 3 years to make a game, and the game's like maximum or its optimal sales window is like 3 months, that's a problem.
Yeah.
You know what I just realized might
What's
be
that?
kind of funny, might be kind of sad. I think there might be just 3 games from this year that I have gotten a hold of, and technically, all 3 of them I've gotten to play for free. Got the Quake 2 remaster,
Nice.
Mighty Doom, and that RoboCop demo.
Oh,
Very
dude, that
nice.
RoboCop demo looks sweet.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think out of the AAA company, or out of the AAA sphere, I maybe have gotten 2 games this year. And anybody who's anybody can probably easily guess the first one.
Was it Tears of the Kingdom?
Benji, right on the money. And the other one was, what else was it? Either way, both of them were from Nintendo. Because, say what you will about their legal practices, I have a huge amount to complain about Nintendo with in regards to that. But at least the quality of their games is still good. It's still fun to play. And if it is a story focused game, the story is still very focused, so to speak. Beyond that, honestly, all of my focus has been on what you've been talking about, Chris, which is the renaissance of retro gaming emulation. And unfortunately, because none of these companies ever deemed to see it necessary to preserve their own games with a decent service, I decide to sail the high seas of the internet.
Yeah, I don't like. Do you know who Some Ordinary Gamers is? Have you ever heard
I'm
of
very
it?
familiar with Mudahar.
Okay, yeah. So Muda he makes a really good point where he's like, it's morally just to pirate old Nintendo games because you're not going to see them anywhere else.
Yeah.
Or you've already bought them like 20 times. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean that's why I figure since no studio ever has a proper way to preserve their games through an actual decent service, which I guarantee you 90% of the people who are sailing the high seas would pay buku bucks for a decent service that has all the games that they want to play.
yeah,
Far
Gabe Newell made a speech about that.
Exactly. But since these studios are so stubborn about this, I figure a decent cutoff date between where it is morally reprehensible and morally just to pirate games is 10 years.
So once the game is launched, you add 10 years to that launch date, and that's the morally just Robin Hood window.
Yeah, because but by 10 years, they're either going to remake it, re-release it, or let it go to the dustbin of history.
Mm.
It's basically a really good litmus test for understanding what will or will not come back.
Well, what bothers me are the limitations of licensing. Like, good luck ever trying to find a game like Outrun to ever come back, because after Sega or I can't, was it Sumo Digital or whomever lost the licensing with Ferrari, they're like, yep, you're never gonna find this game in like a free release or like a here's a remaster or whatever.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
similarly, something I finally started up that is just such a time capsule, and I see like no chance of this getting any kind of re-release. 007 Everything or Nothing.
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
absolutely.
This is so ahead of its time. Like, oh man, a remaster would be fantastic, but that's like a total impossibility.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
GoldenEye, just GoldenEye alone, the absurdity that had to be done to get that barely functioning with like these two like broken, incomplete re-releases that kind of try to do one thing that the other doesn't.
Yeah.
It's crazy enough. There's no way this is gonna get anything like that.
Well, I'd like to basically point out that of my emulation library, of which, as it stands today, goes from the NES and stretches to the PlayStation 2 era,
Mhm.
I'd like to say a solid 75 to 80% of those games, outside of fans talking about it and general fan buzz, will never see the light of day again.
Yeah.
I would so love to get my hands on a copy of something like God Hand.
Yeah. Well, those mini consoles, those little like classic consoles that came out.
Yeah,
Like
the SNES Classic, yeah, I had a couple of those.
I am so glad
I
to
bought
actually have a copy of Driver San Francisco, a physical copy of Driver San Francisco. Oh, and Eternal Darkness, Sanity's Requiem.
Oh yeah, hell yeah,
Mhm,
GameCube mint.
nice.
But like I bought every one of those consoles not because I needed the ROMs, because I already had them. Like I've already been emulating those games, but because I want to financially incentivize these companies to do more of that.
Exactly.
Release games that we will never see again. Like,
Well, not only that, that's also a really good chance for these companies to release games that back in the day never saw light in a particular region.
yeah, well, we saw
Like,
Star
for
Fox
example,
too.
in the SNES Classic Edition, they had Terra Enigma,
Oh yeah,
which never released stateside.
Or one that I had a blast with, Metal Wolf Chaos XD.
Hell
Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Oh yeah, that's just ridiculous. Like it was released on the American console. It's in English. It's about the President of the United States fighting to protect the great United States of America, and somehow it didn't get a U.S. release when it first launched. Wonder why.
Gee, I don't know.
Well, no, I was ecstatic for Star Fox 2. Like that was the
Oh
first time we ever saw that on the SNES Classic, where they're
man,
like, "Hey,
can you imagine if something like Rare Replay launched with Project Dream on it?
Oh my
wow,
God.
yeah, I'll take
Now
it."
that might have been a uh Xbox One seller for me.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I just it sucks because, like I was saying earlier, like I'm not a fan of modern gaming. I don't like marginally interactive CG films. You know, I don't like playing DVD menus, and I don't like this anti-consumer always like create an account and ask permission to access a product you purchased. You know, this
Mhm.
like glorified rental terminal. No thanks.
I hear a lot
The-
about like failed Hollywood wannabes finding work in the game industry.
Oh yeah, dude. Like that was a real like downer when I got into the industry and I thought I was among my people because I worked blue collar jobs, you know. Dude, Fisky, you got some weird shit over there with that video game stuff. What is that? You know, like they're more interested in talking about like sports or whatever, which, you know, more power to them. That's their hobby. But
yeah.
like I thought I could geek out with like the gamers, you know, and it turned out that these people were too cool for school, and they like, you know, they were, you know, it was amazing how many of them were like not like educated, like, and they weren't like they weren't into their product. Like it was like the opposite of a drug dealer. Like you're supposed to sample your product. You know, beware the skinny chef, beware the game designer that doesn't play video games. And
Yeah,
these
exactly.
people, yeah, like a lot of the concept artists and stuff, yeah, they all like, to them Hollywood was the goal. Like video games was just the stepping stool.
Well, honestly, the other thing that I'd like to kind of add, partially as a joke, but also partially as a theory, is that a lot of these games that we see come out nowadays that are, you know, like you said, glorified movies or anything like that,
Mhm.
I think that they have truly entered the art space, the art of of money laundering.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, you know, you're talking about Beware the Skinny Chef, the, you know, game creator who doesn't play video games. We had another death knell in the art in the art area of this whole idea, where the artist who never went to study art and study the grades, and so they'll make, you know, millions of dollars off of a red stripe on a canvas because some millionaires wanted to use their painting to launder money.
Yep.
Oh, I hate those things. But yeah, I guess you're all, something I'd forgotten about that. You're reminding me, especially since like I guess this kind of thing even reaches up to the CEOs. Y'all remember things like the development of, I believe it was the 3DO port of Doom.
Oh
Oh.
yeah. God, that was awful.
Like wasn't it something going on, like a CEO who was so completely out of touch with his own business that he thought that if you like dragged and dropped a JPEG into the files, then just boom, a fully formed gun would just materialize in the engine.
Oh, that would be nice. Would have saved me a lot of work.
Right?
Oh yeah, a few days should be enough to port this PC game over to the 3DO, right? Or you can do it over lunch, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna build my game with a game controller. Man.
Oh God, that
And
just
the
reminds me of the
cutscenes,
freaking
the cutscenes
submarine
that are now
incident.
lost media, I guess. Because like something was recorded. Some screenshots have come out. Like that would have at least, that was supposed to be the big killer feature that was supposed to make it the best version of all, but
Right.
that never happened. am curious about those though.
Man, yeah. I don't know. I gotta go check out the Doom port on my 3DO collection. Man,
I mean,
or
so we do have at least something good to talk about. At least the independent space of video game creators have been doing very well, so long as they don't fall into the usual indie trappings.
yeah, I want to make a Metroidvania.
I want to make
Hear that a
Undertale
lot.
3.0. Fighting is bad, okay?
Yeah. Oh God, remember Depression Quest, the whole thing that kicked off Gamergate back in 2014?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, with what's her nuts? Zoe
Yeah,
Quinn,
yeah. Whatever her alias that she wants to be known as now.
right?
She's got about 30. Her real name's Chelsea von Valkenberg or whatever.
Huh.
Yeah, whatever. Like basically, she had like a survey monkey. It looked like a web page where it was just a bunch of multiple choice like answers, and it was passed off as a game, and banged her way up the judges list or whatever, and cheated on her boyfriend doing it, and the game got all sorts of weird undue coverage, and got all sorts of awards, and it was like you're competing against actual games, and your game looks like it was made with an HTML editor.
Right.
Yeah, that was. But yeah, there's a lot of those auteurs that like want to push like propaganda instead of actual gameplay. And I know a lot of people hate Phil Fish, and I know he's probably not a very good person to be around, but at least his indie game was amazing. Like
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever played it, but yeah, it's like the whole concept of turning 2D into 3D, but it's really still 2D.
Oh yeah,
Like,
the 2.5D stuff.
yeah, it's called Fez. No, the entire game was sprites. Like there were 2.5D is just 3D graphics on a 2D plane. This was
Oh yeah. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah, like he was definitely an auteur. He was definitely an artsy whatever, but like
At
he
least
had a
he made
game.
his art house crap fun.
Yeah, he made a game, and it's a shame that a lot of these other indie whatever's lack that talent. Like, and again, however much you despise the guy or whatever, he still made a really good product.
Oh
And
yeah.
Yeah, even
it's
someone like, what was his name? The braid guy, Jonathan Blow,
Yeah.
was it? Like, he
Yeah.
seems like a class act now in comparison to what's going on today.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's
like
also
I miss
why
those guys.
Yeah, that's why I go so hard, whenever I guest star on different live streams to plug my friends, both CQ and Natsukaze. I plug their games everywhere I go because not only are they decent people, the
Mhm.
games they're making are really, really interesting.
Nice.
Which, for anybody who's like interested, you can find them on Twitter at C_Q or Natsukaze and give their work a look. Like even just in the music production, these guys they might not know what they're doing exactly, but they certainly have figured it out.
Well, I mean,
Uh,
I'm the reason why I fully endorse and appreciate the indies is because if you're making like a garage game by yourself and you are the auteur and you're the Phil Fish or the Jonathan Blow or whatever, you're all that's left of innovation now, because corporate games, the AAA media, is about risk aversion. It's about they're beholden to their shareholders. They're trying to get maximum profits. The experimentation no longer has any place in game development. That's why every game has a number after its title, or it's the way that the game is pitched. They usually use examples of other games that were financially successful.
It's kind of why Valve you could say Valve isn't a video game company anymore.
Yep. Yeah, they
Yeah.
can't count. They can't count to 3.
Well, that's why, even though I am in independent game dev myself,
Mhm.
I don't.
Uh-oh.
What?
Yeah, you just this
I think
happened
his
before.
microphone.
Nope.
Looks like your
Yeah,
microphone got
it was my
unplugged.
microphone.
It said
Oh.
device not connected.
Yeah, that happens when I hop in on StreamYard every once in a while. But to kind of continue the thought here, the main particular reason, I don't call myself anything more than a wannabe is because I'm going in depth on every particular angle that I can. And sure, that's probably a bad way to do it if I'm looking to make money off of this. But for me, it's a passion project. I want the writing to be well. I want the art to be done properly. I want to learn to play the music myself. Like I'm basically approaching everything as its own subject, as a deep dive. Sure, it'll take eternity to come out, but when it does, I feel like every piece that I turn out will at least be something that I can be proud of. It can be considered a masterpiece of my own work.
Yeah, yeah. I know. I had a coworker who I share his opinion, but I mean it kind of flies in the face of what I had previously said about staying away from the big companies. Is that if you want to be a good game designer, go into QA. It's like the least, or it's like the most poorly treated department in the industry. But QA has insights that no other department has, and that's they're constantly forced to play your game. So any bad game design is exacerbated. It's amplified 100-fold, and any good game design becomes something that's also magnified. So it's when you start to see how things work, and you're starting to kind of be like you as a QA, or sometimes game testers, which are occasionally two different departments, they generally have the best insights for game design, because they're playing products of other people, and it allows them to reap what works and what doesn't at a fundamental level, and not just the finished product level.
Right. And I've had multiple people tell me, this is a really bad way to approach, and maybe you shouldn't do video games. But I mean, I'm approaching it as a writer because writing is what I know. So yeah, I'm laying down all the groundwork for all of the writing and lore, because everything here is supposed to be interconnected on some level. But at the same time, I'm not just spending hours writing books in my back area. It's basically building up the bones so that I can be like, okay, I have these ideas. They're solid. I know what I'm doing with them. I'll set it to the side, and now I can focus on the next part. Because to me, my two big genres that basically drove me into becoming a game dev were JRPGs, and specifically in that the Tales series, and puzzle adventure games, specifically Legend of Zelda.
Yeah,
And
Legend of Zelda is a
sure,
masterpiece.
oh yeah. And sure, a lot of the times I'm branching out with some of my other ideas. There are some games where I'm like, I kind of want this to have a Doom feel. That's always what I try and do. Instead of saying, "Oh, I'm going to make Doom, but my Doom," I go, "Okay, I want it to feel like Doom, but I'm not going to copy the homework. I'm just going to see why Doom felt good, and I'm going to see if I can't replicate that in a way that still fits my style."
Yeah, well, I going back to that, what I was saying about the beware the skinny chef and beware the game designer that doesn't play games. Yeah, like part of ludology there, or the studying of games, is playing games. And if there are aspects of games that you like, it's within your best interest to play Frankenstein with core elements of games, getting capturing the core game loop of Super Mario Brothers with the addictive frenetics of Doom, or the collection elements of Banjo-Kazooie with the tactical elements of, I don't know, Fire Emblem or something. Like being able to understand that language through actually playing through it all is huge. And that was
Exactly.
kind of also what I meant by like the whole QA thing, is that, not only is playing your games as a customer, like you should always empathize with your customer when you're making products, but getting in at the oops. I feel bad. I'm like blathering on, and Shiro just dropped out. Welcome back.
Yeah, good old microphone issues.
Yeah, or something I guess I've wanted to do for a while. Like, how would I put it? Like combining the platforming of Spyro and Toy Story 2 with the racing of Kirby Air Ride and Lego Racers, and that probably sounds completely incoherent, but it makes sense to me.
Well, that's the thing, is like, it's not, how do you know it's not viable until you try it,
Exactly.
I mean, I wrote down a design document trying to make things cohesive, but it probably sounds like absolute havoc out of context.
Yeah. Well, I
Well,
mean,
that's part of your game pitch is also, defining what your pillars are, so that when you communicate it, especially when you're asking other people to work on it or give you money for it, always consider, like, how do I, when I pitch this, how do I change it from the chaos of awesomeness into a one sentence or very short description that I can get somebody else excited about it.
Oh
That's
yeah, like I do hear that professionals saying that they have a strong inclination to turn down any kind of it's X meets Y pitches.
Mhm. Yeah. And it's funny because that was actually like almost conditioning from years of being taught to distill your pitch into easily understandable language. When you say it's X like Y, you're leveraging, their previous understanding or understanding of previous works, so that you can shorten your pitch. And again, it's two-edged. It's like making a resume or a CV. Like you get conflicting advice from every recruiter. Some of them want the flashiness to stand out. Others are like, you put that, I'm going to throw it in the bin. But yeah, I mean, when you're looking at like a game, as grandiose as it sounds, always start with the small and work your way out, and define, like, what are the pillars of this game. Like, the 3 to 5 pillars. These are everything that this game should entail, and every feature, every system, everything that I'm working on has to reinforce one of these pillars. And if it doesn't, then it could be a good idea for another game, but it's not going in this one. And
Yeah,
I
that
mean
helps you.
that's
Yeah,
the.
Oops,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Lug. I've got a long one to touch base on because Chris just tickled an old thought in the back of my brain. So
oh boy. Yeah, you remember what a gag it was with that one review line for I think it was Far Cry 3? The whole line of it's like Skyrim with guns. There's a throwback.
Yeah, it used
right.
to be an adventure until it took a was an armor piercing round to the knee.
Yeah.
I
But
think some even were I think some kinds of execs were mistaking the gag of how much people were making fun of it for praise, and we started getting like I remember some other game that was like proudly displaying it's like Minecraft with guns, and like and just the pain of seeing that. Oh no, your marketing needs to stop. That it's that line is getting attention for not the reason you think
Yeah.
it is.
Hello,
it's
fellow kids.
it's great for doing pitches because then the bean counters understand what it is that you're talking about. Really,
Uh-oh.
It's okay, microphone. You have no more surprises.
He just got pulled into the Matrix or something. It was like
Mario
whatever.
4, even if I don't quite agree with how they define some of their pillars, and it's what I greatly criticize Sonic the Hedgehog for lacking.
Yeah, clear vision.
Yeah, well, it's not just clear vision, it's also just the fact that let's touch on Sonic the Hedgehog since it's such a great example of what not to be.
Yeah, we still don't have something that has the classic physics in 3D. Like,
Yeah.
even in the like, about the
Create the
only classic era 3D thing with, like, any kind of platforming mechanics would just be the little bonus hub world from Sonic Jam that only exists solely because it's cobbled together from cut assets for an early prototype of Sonic Adventure when it was going to be an RPG.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think about it, if you really look at Sonic, you have three basic pillars. Only StreamYard I have this problem with. Everything else, my mic is fine. It's only
Now we know someone's messing with you.
Oh no!
Wow.
Am I going to be?
Whoa.
Am I good? Am I
Sound
good to
different?
stick?
Did you switch to a different device?
No, I did not. It's
Weird. You
lit-
sound much clearer now.
Yeah, you don't have an echo.
Huh. Well, it's literally only StreamYard I ever have this particular problem with my microphone with. If you contact me on like other areas,
it's perfectly fine. I don't know what the problem is, but either way, you basically with Sonic, you have three E's now technically four pillars that you can work off of. You have the classic format, which is known to be a breadwinner. You have the adventure format, not Heroes, not 06, Adventure DX and Adventure 2. You have those two as a singular pillar, which is known to be wildly popular. People are still begging for Sonic Adventure 3.
I have a whole pitch for that.
Every dream game designer has a pitch for Sonic Adventure 3. And then you have the boost pillar, which is fairly divisive, but it does have its fervent fans. And now you have the frontiers pillar.
Yeah, the open zone thing. Although I don't know, maybe it's more of like a branch or a subcategory of boost.
Well, what I consider to be the frontiers pillar is the refined version of 06, because the way I hear the developers talking about 06 and the way frontiers play, it's not 1-to-1, but it's so absolutely close that it feels like they basically just took that original pitch from 06, put the guy who was in charge of the comics as charge of the writing, and basically went from there.
And now with like the DLC, suddenly you got all these fully 3D focused levels. They're finally cutting back on all the 2D sections that spawn from Unleashed.
Yeah, and so basically, if Sonic stuck to those four pillars, and they don't have to say, oh, this is this pillar or this is that pillar, but basically if they went with, okay, this is kind of our gameplay idea that we know works and we can get it to work, and they innovate off of that, they would be making money hand over. They would not be having nearly as much problems as they would now. And then they could introduce a fifth pillar, which is all of their weird experimental shit. Like,
could you
who
imagine?
remembers Sonic Brotherhood, the Dark Chronicles? that could belong in, the potpourri fifth category.
Could you imagine if like a lot of these gameplay shifts were made more for like spin-offs for other characters? Like we got a little bit of that with Tails, Knuckles, and Shadow.
Yeah, exactly.
Like just imagine if the apparently they wanted to have Sonic Adventure be more like Genesis in 3D, but the Dreamcast just couldn't quite get that to work. Like you see the level design for the quote unquote Windy Valley beta level, and it was certainly going for that, but the hardware wasn't there yet. And then that one little misstep just had such a tremendous butterfly effect on the entire series to this day. I feel like the whole franchise would be in a completely different state if they had actually gotten that to work all the way back in 1998. The whole series would likely be radically different right now.
Yeah. Well, now to, touch back onto Mario and his pillars and how it works so well for Nintendo specifically, is you have very defined gameplay aspects of Mario. Sure, all the little minutia can change and evolve as need be, but you basically have 2D Mario, 3D Mario, then you've got basically Mario 64, which is its own pillar from 3D Mario, because you've got, Mario 64, Super Mario Sunshine, Super Mario Odyssey, even some of the Galaxy games kind of fit under that. And then you've got Mario RPG, which has changed itself every once in a while. And then Paper Mario, which that's the one that I fully disagree with where they went on it. And then they've got the sixth pillar, which is generally this is not Paper Mario experimental. This is like something beyond that this is just full on experimentation. The only thing is I really think that if they had stuck with Paper Mario 1 and 2, Thousand Year Door, and basically made that its own pillar instead of being like, oh, this is our, paper experiment pillar. I honestly, I think Paper Mario would be in a whole lot better place, at least reception wise. But beyond that, everybody knows when they see a particular way that a Mario game is built, even if it's not like this is this pillar, they understand fundamentally what they're going into, what they can expect, and whether they're going to enjoy it or not.
And then on a similar note, you got Zelda with its at least 3 pillars, and fortunately, it looks like whatever you might call the whole Ocarina, Wind Waker, Twilight style. Seems like Nintendo has no intention of going back to that anytime soon. Like no plans for the foreseeable future. Apparently, whatever they're going to do next is going to be another open world thing.
Well,
I would just love to see more of that, but there's barely we get plenty of 2D Zelda clones, I guess, and what's coming out that's 3D, like the very rare occasional Darksiders or Prince of Persia, more or less.
Yeah. Well, with Zelda, I would define it more as 4 different categories, which are kind of because the way they build it is kind of weird. But you have 2D Zelda, 3D Zelda, linear Zelda, and open Zelda. And
yeah, okay. Like I was thinking, where would you put Skyward Sword? Like kind of a branch of the initial 3D, so to speak.
Well, yeah. There's also the pillars are within those games, though. Like one of the pillars would be for Wind Waker would be making use of the motion controls in a significant way to both parry and attack. Making fun gameplay with use of motion controls. That would be one of the pillars of Skyward Sword, and I think they failed miserably.
Oh yeah, and what I would argue is now more or less a 5th pillar of Zelda is Warriors Zelda, because they do know that it makes them an absolute bucket load of money. People love to buy Warriors Zelda stuff. And
the Orochi
so infrequently that whenever it comes out, people go bananas for it.
Yeah, Dynasty Warriors with Zelda coat of paint.
I mean, I have both Hyrule Warriors Age of Calamity and Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition.
Hmm.
And I know some people who have 3 or 4 copies of Hyrule Warriors across the different consoles that they released it on, as well as Age of Calamity. It's a popular pillar for them to work off of.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean that just shows the testament of the Zelda branding, because like the gameplay is essentially Dynasty Warriors or Orochi. You know, it's the you're just running in, killing all of like the minions, and then trying to control points on a large board with, I believe, multiple heroes simultaneously.
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
yeah, and I mean they could have done that with a variety of properties, and they could have, you know, for everybody that loves the Warriors series, you know, like it was funny about that because Age of Calamity was basically the gateway drug for Zelda fans to get into the Warriors Orochi or the Dynasty Warriors style games, where, you know, normally they wouldn't care because like, oh look, I get to play as Bao Bao, or I get to play as
Yoshimitsu or yeah, I know exactly what, or Masamune Date.
yeah, yeah, just like, oh joy, but now I get to play as Link, I get to play as Impa, I get to play as Zelda herself. Like these are things that, you know, the brand actually lent towards that game. If they weren't there, I don't think the games would have been as successful.
I mean, all you have to do is look at Fire Emblem Warriors, which is that same format. But
Yep.
Fire Emblem, we know, is a little bit more niche, and it
Yep.
didn't take off nearly as much
Nope.
until Hyrule Warriors took off, and then people hopped from Hyrule Warriors to Fire Emblem Warriors, then to Dynasty Warriors and Orochi.
Yeah.
Oh man, you want to talk butterfly effects? How about how Marth and Roy almost got cut out of the U.S. release of Super Smash Bros. Melee?
Wow.
Yeah, they almost got cut, and because they didn't, it basically created a massive brand new fan base for Nintendo to tap into for Fire Emblem.
Yeah. I love the SRPG genre. My first taste of it was in the Shining Force games for the Sega Genesis.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, I actually got into Fire Emblem much later on the Game Boy Advance. But yeah, I love that whole game series. And when I saw Roy and I saw Marth on the Smash Brothers roster, because again, I didn't get into Smash because I didn't have an N64. I didn't get into it until like the GameCube era, but just being able to see characters that you'd see on the battlefield was like, oh sweet, I know who those are, you know. And again, yeah, it was super niche. Like people were like, who the hell is that?
I mean, honestly, I will admit that I didn't quite get into Fire Emblem and SRPGs, Jesus,
Mhm.
until actually Smash Brawl with Ike.
Mhm.
Because out of the swordsman characters in Smash, of which there are now way too many,
Yeah, way too many. Yeah.
Ike was probably my second favorite after Link, mainly because his Aether and Great Aether attacks are just so absolutely
Yes!
freaking busted.
Yeah.
Those-
Yeah.
he just like, dang, he uses his sword as a projectile weapon, basically.
Yeah.
Well, that and Ike's, you know, when you played like, was it Path of Radiance or whatever, or Radiant Dawn, like he was basically the OG wielder of the Buster Sword. Like his
He
weapon
basically
was
looks like
huge.
he basically looks like Shonen Guts.
Yeah,
Yeah, he really
that's
does.
perfect. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I like that. I like the fact that there was actually a distinction in the way that he played, because in Fire Emblem, you know, there really is no distinction. And like you're a sword, or you're a pole arm, or an axe, or a long ranged archery, or whatever. That's it. You know,
Yeah, like, oh, I don't know
yeah.
who this spiky red-haired guy is that looks like the dude from Ape Escape, but hey, his sword blows up, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's sword, lance, axe, Manakite, mage, archer. Yeah, you basically have 6 archetypes, and really you're lucky if you get a Manakite.
well, the fact that there's no sub distinctions, you know, that sucked. Like,
Oh, absolutely. You know, outside of like some movement speeds and stuff like that, where you have like knight or anything like that, anything outside of that, or weapon styles or way of attacking, yeah, there was no distinction whatsoever.
and he's gone. um, did the mic people finally get their revenge on Shiro? And he's back. Welcome back to the stage in history.
I swear to God, why is it always StreamYard that does this to me?
I have no idea, man. But you were talking, and he's gone again.
Guess not. Oh, dang, it went out so quick. It disappeared as I was clicking add to stage.
Oh wow.
Oh my god.
StreamYard is just desperate to make you talk as much as the actual link.
And he's gone again. He didn't even say anything.
Jesus Christ. Oh my god. Well, I love technological problems, don't you?
Yeah. Man, it could be a real debugger.
Yeah. Well, it could also just be the fact that it's probably about time for me to upgrade my PC, and there's just so many other things on my financial plate that's
Oh
like,
yeah.
because and it's just like I'm looking at this, I'm like, you're only 5 years old, most of your components are still relevant. Why are you giving me so much trouble?
Yeah, man. I am horrified by the current economic state of what's going on, that I have like no desire to make any big purchases. So I feel you on that end.
Honestly, because of the economic state, they're not big purchases, but I'm making a lot of important purchases.
Mhm, mhm.
One of them mainly being books. Lots and lots of books.
Oh,
This isn't quite the purview of the stream, so we can talk about it later. But yeah, there's some really neat and rad books. I've been slowly working on it over the years, but just kind of seeing what's on the horizon. It's like, okay, yeah, I really need to get my hands on some of this stuff as soon as possible, or else it's going to be impossible to get.
yeah,
Especially with
physical media
how,
is dying.
yeah, well, especially with how quick prices are rising.
Oh yeah, yeah, man. Shipping, yeah, everything. Like Amazon Day is what, yesterday and today, and I'm
Yep.
like, oh, yeah, I'm not interested.
Yeah, I mean, I basically spent Amazon Day basically just getting like 6 more books, and even that, I'm just looking at that, I'm like, whew, that took a hefty chunk out of my bank account right there.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's honestly, I think that's why we're going to see a brand new golden age of piracy.
Mm. Yeah, because
Like,
it's not convenient.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
expensive.
honestly, it's not going to be the same, golden age of piracy as most people think about, but it's, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, most of the stuff that people use to just kind of make their lives easier or more bearable, it's getting so prohibitively expensive that people would much rather turn to piracy than watch their bank account basically go in the negatives in a hurry.
Well, I mean, you just summed up communist China. I mean, communist China has absolutely zero respect for intellectual property, and everything is pirated over there.
It's either pirated or knocked off to hell and back.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's at a point now where it's funny because 10, 15 years ago, when the game developer or the studios were all like, China, oh, let's build studios in China, and because they weaponized their overpopulation. They're like, why do I care about selling to the 1.6 million sales in the United States and Europe when I can get 1.6 billion from a country that's overpopulated? And so they all went over there. It was like the glorious frontier, and then they realized it was all a bunch of thieves and pirates and shit, and they're like, oh crap. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, I was just about to say it. Yeah, and now they're turning their sights on India as the next big possible, great pocket hole of money that they can tap into. And unfortunately, they don't realize that India is just about as they're basically just as capable of piracy as China ever was, if not worse.
I mean, who are the biggest scam artists right now? India. Hello, I am calling from Microsoft. Please go to your computer and go to this website to download a antivirus software to get the virus off your computer. Elderly American. Okay. Boom, takes over your computer. You got a virus.
Yep. I mean, honestly, I got like 3 or 4 of those scam calls just today alone.
Yeah. Yeah. My name is Steve. Yeah, sure it is.
Usually, if I start hearing Hindi inflected English, I go back to them with, oh yeah, top of the morning to you. My name is Isaac Smith. How are you doing?
I almost never answer like calls that I don't know. Like,
I get belligerent because usually if I'm way too busy in the middle of something, I'll usually ignore it. But if I have some free time and I'm feeling a little bit spunky, a little fiery, I'll be like, I got some time to kill. Let's troll the shit out of this guy.
Well, I remember one time I was at my sister's and she still has a landline, which is foreign to me because I haven't had one in over a decade. But she her phone started getting spam calls. And I remember she's like, oh, spam call, because she was looking at caller ID. I'm like, you want me to answer it? She's like, okay. So I pick up the phone and I'm like, Mushi, go Minnesota, no English. I'm like trying to is so and so, basically so and so. I'm like, they are not here. They do very dishonorable things.
Honestly, I need to put that back in my cap because I am studying Japanese. Of like, if I answer one of these, I should just be like moshi moshi and just start speaking Japanese to them. Because usually, if you start doing something crazy like that, they'll just hang up on you.
Yeah.
And to me, that brings no short of satisfaction to my soul.
What? Kitskube. Yeah, dirty American devil. Man, yeah, I don't know. What were we talking about before your mic exploded?
God, I don't even know anymore.
Yeah, I just got distracted by my cat, and I'm like, oh crap.
I mean, I guess we started at like the mass exodus from Unity to Godot and unsung behind the scenes game dev stuff.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm assuming that this is probably not the only podcast that we are going to end up doing. So I figure it if it's not that important this time, we can probably hit it next time instead. Depending upon how long you want the podcast to end up being,
I mean, yeah, that's what Chris was talking about, the kind of stuff Chris was talking about, all his experiences.
Yeah, we're like 2.5 hours in now.
Well, I mean, it's usually nice to get the war stories out of the way.
Yeah.
That way, you know, you can dive into the real nitty gritty. Although, unlike you know, Nick's channel where we always end up derailed into politics, I kind of wish we could kind of more stick on topic with you know, like the mechanics and art and you know stuff like that, because politics just invades everything.
Well, it does now. I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it has a nasty habit now of just sticking its grubby little fingers into every corner. It's just like, you know, it'd be nice to just talk games and talk shop.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've done to kind of scratch that creative itch is, even though I'm no longer a video game developer and haven't been one for about a decade, you know, I'm still a gamer at heart, and I still enjoy, like, you know, the offline or the analog games. And I've been working on my own tabletop RPG. And
Nice.
yeah, I mean, it's the reason why I went that route is because I don't really need any assistance. I mean, I can commission all of my art. I'm a graphic designer, so I can lay out the book. I mean, I worked in pre-press and print for, you know, better part of a decade.
Right.
You know, so the only thing that I really need is time, access to Microsoft Office and Adobe Creative Suite, and yeah, a bunch of people to beat the crap out of my stuff.
I mean,
And yeah,
just as a little tidbit to you,
Mhm.
but if you don't want to end up paying for Microsoft Office, but you want to be able to convert Word files over into something else,
Mhm.
check out LibreOffice.
yeah, well, for a while I used Star Office, but when I worked,
I generally use OpenOffice Writer.
yeah, I ended up getting Microsoft Office for, like, I think it was like $20 or something. Apparently one of the studios I worked for had a deal with Microsoft, and we were able to get like the OEM whatever versions of Office. Like, I'll never go the O365 route. I don't want to pay recurring fees for a word processor.
Yeah, screw that. That's kind of why I can't transfer the OEM version that I got from other you know, alternative sources.
Mhm.
I can't find it anymore, which is why I ended up doing LibreOffice, because I was basically able to format all of my Word files over into that, and I can also reformat them back if need be.
Nice. Yeah, I love the flexibility of open source word processors. I mean, dude, I came from like my game script, or I should say the chronicled version of my game that is now going into my comic book, started its life in Corel Word Perfect. The screen was blue
Nice.
with white text. I mean, this is like 90s crap. And then I converted it over to Microsoft Works, not Word, but Works.
Yeah, I
And
remember Works.
yeah, and then they finally sunset that one, and I was able to convert everything over to Word. And now, yeah, it's still in Word, but it's definitely seen a lot of iterations and you know, a lot of reworking since its inception back in, like, what, 91, 92?
Oh, absolutely.
Man. But yeah, now everything is in Word and then converted into like Adobe InDesign for layout, so that when it goes to print, it'll actually look pretty. And then yeah, and then I get my commissioned artists to make pretty art, like what you're seeing on my my little picture here.
Yeah,
And bam,
I definitely like the pixel art. That's definitely really nice.
hell yeah, harkens back to the 16-bit era. I'm actually working on a perk that I'm not fully ready to show yet, but basically I sent out a like a survey after the first book, asking people, you know, what perks did they like, which perks do they have no interest in, and all that stuff. And surprisingly, I got there was actually you know, is there any perks that haven't been mentioned here? Please mention them. And apparently I got a surprising number of people that liked magnets. Like,
Huh.
that was a new one for me. I was like, okay. So I'm going to be doing something with some 16-bit pixel art here and magnets, little acrylic ones.
Nice.
Hell
Well,
yeah.
on top of the whole game devery kind of aspect, I was also going to touch on doing TTRPG in my own setting as well.
Nice.
Just because there's so much lore and so much writing work and so much background work that I basically slaved over putting into this. 'Cause this whole universe is like my little baby.
Mhm.
But I also understand that you can't just have every little bit of lore and every little bit of game. You have to cut like lots of it out in order to not bore your players.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
Any lore. Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just about to say, so I figure any lore that being cut, I could just put into a TTRPG book because those people eat that crap up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and with that, you know, if people just want to play the games and they don't care that much about the deep lore, they can just play the games and have fun. And if they want to make their own games and they want to understand the deep lore, there's that option waiting for them.
Mhm. Yeah, some lessons I learned in narrative design was never always have more lore and information than you're actually giving your players, because when you're presenting your world or your universe or your whatever, essentially you need to have all the answers. This also works in Dungeons and Dragons. If you're the DM or in tabletop in general, if you're running the story, the world's only as big as the dungeon master or the story guide or the narrator or whatever, game master.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily need to tell the players until the question is asked, but you better have that answer ready. And that's where documenting all of your lore comes, it comes in super handy. And another thing about lore is that lore or world building in general should always be in service to the story. If it's not, then it's excessive information that nobody cares about. And I know it sounds really cold, especially when you spend a lot of time working on it. But the idea is that every piece of lore that you have has to in some way relate back to your immediate game or story in some way. If it doesn't,
absolutely.
yeah, if it doesn't, it becomes noise to signal, and you end up having muddy waters. And yeah, and again, most of your lore, most of your world building is invisible to your audience. They most of them won't ever see it until the questions are asked.
From a different perspective, because I know you're approaching it from the game maker angle,
Mhm.
I'll also kind of define it from the writing angle as well.
Mhm.
Your story is defined far more by what you leave out than what you put in.
Yeah, that's true. Because your audience, as a reader, your audience is participating in your story as well, whether or not, like a lot of authors don't understand that if they over embellish descriptions and if they
give you all the
dominate
answers, nobody cares.
yeah, if they dominate the story, then it leaves no audience participation. And part of reading is audience participation. It's a subconscious thing, but people don't understand that readers are creating the world that you're giving them hints about.
Right. Like, for example, if you end up meeting a higher power, if you give them all the information about who this person is, who this being is, how they act, what their person, all of this kind of information, all of a sudden they're either bored or worse, they don't care.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
scratch that, reverse that. They either don't care or worse, they're bored. But if you introduce them to this, you give them nothing but a name and one other real quick thing that they are doing for you in the moment, and then they go, well, what the fuck was that? Now you've built intrigue. Now they have a question that they want answered.
Mhm.
And the longer that you never answer that question, the more they're going to harp on it and the more interest they'll have in it.
Well, it kind of goes in, and I hate to say it because he's a terrible storyteller, but he's an excellent builder. He's just a terrible executor. J.J. Abrams' Magic Bar or Mystery Box.
Oh,
Yeah.
there we go.
Yeah, it's part of that intrigue is having a good payoff. So if you leave something unanswered, eventually it needs to be answered. You need to have that answer for them, and it needs to be satisfying.
Or the other option, which is one of my other personal favorite options, which is you have the answer. You know what it is. You never give it to them. Like the thing.
People want to see Chekhov's gun get fired.
Yeah. If you show it in chapter 1, it needs to be fired by chapter 3.
Yeah, but the reason I say that is how much do people obsess over the thing? Because they don't know, even after multiple rewatches, you still can't pinpoint when and where the thing goes from person to person. And even though you feel like you have a ghost of an inkling of who is the thing by the end, you have no idea. Now, if you read a lot of the auxiliary material that are supposed to be sequels to it, yeah, they give you the answer. But the sequel material was never as interesting as the initial movie.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I've watched a lot of people dissect that final scene in the thing where Childs and Kurt Russell's character are sitting there, and Kurt Russell drinks from the flask and hands it over to Childs, who in a previous scene they were talking about don't share any drinks or food because that's how the thing can take you over.
Yeah.
And if Childs was the thing, he'd have no fear of that and would happily grab the flask, and that's what he did. And they also play because John Carpenter is a master of storyteller with low budget. He also is a musician, and if you recall, as soon as he hands over the flask, as soon as Child takes the sip, you hear the theme of the thing, and that's why Kurt Russell's character McCready there like gives a sigh of like, oh god, Childs is the thing. Like it's his discovery, his eureka moment.
Well,
so
that's also
subtle.
one of my favorite things about writing as a video game creator is you can introduce leitmotifs, which is something that I feel is utterly wasted on most non-independent developer game devs.
Oh, that drove me so nuts with like Doom Eternal. There's so many callbacks to classic tunes that make absolutely no sense. Like Dark Halls is Dark Halls is like the one classic tune that gets used in the Mars level, but then it's also used in the Ark Complex level for no apparent reason, and it's the You Lose theme in multiplayer. Why?
Yeah. Well, one of my personal favorite ways of using leitmotif, and I'll touch kind of on anime here for a sec, is Sasuke. Say what you will about Naruto, good, bad, good to bad, doesn't matter. The way they use the idea of motif and leitmotif in the music around Sasuke Uchiha and his story is genius. Because you base the motif for him is do and you basically have 5 notes that as soon as you play it, you know Sasuke is somewhere, or he's being mentioned, or he's doing something, and the tone that happens around that leitmotif informs you either how he's feeling or how you should feel about what's going on. And I feel like Western devs, even if they understand the concept of it, they never use it right. And another really good one for, way back classic fans is Final Fantasy VI. Because
Cecil.
No, you're thinking 4. Final Fantasy VI was the one with Kefka.
Oh, wow.
Because every main character had a leitmotif, even the villain. And their motifs would change over the story to tell you, who's in the spotlight and what emotion they're feeling. Even Kefka, who has the do 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 do. You have that, which gives you the air of a clown, but depending upon what he's doing, the tone of that particular note changes based on his action or his state of being. And it even appears in his boss fight when he finally appears as the last part of the final boss. And it's one of those things where it's like that is brilliant storytelling from a show don't tell perspective.
Man, I miss when Sonic games would give you 6 playable characters and every one of them would have a theme song.
Right? Well, actually, here's another good one for both of those ends from a newer game.
Oh no!
Here we go again.
Great timing.
Right?
And here we
But oh, what was it? God of War, the new God of War game. Because Kratos is a quiet character. So a lot of his lines are, grunts or I see or is that so?
Boy!
But you can see by the way he acts, that he's, even though you're not hearing his thoughts, you see him thinking and you get an inkling of what he's thinking. And in a similar mind, you also have a motif for Kratos, which is that Hasin. And every time you hear that, you're like, oh, where's Kratos? What is he doing? What is he feeling? It draws your mind to that particular character because you know that sound, that music is associated with that character. It's just one of those really neat writing tricks that I wish a lot of Western devs would utilize a lot more, because I feel like it would give their games and their writing a whole brand new layer of depth that you don't really see a lot of times outside of Japan.
Yeah, like with, I guess, bring it back to Doom Eternal. Like, I know they brought back like the victory theme, the music that plays in those text walls at the end of each episode in the classic game. It's brought back when you're around this character, the Betrayer. Like, okay, I guess that kind of works, but if you're going to bring it back, it would probably be more appropriate whenever you arrive back at the hub world, since you'll just be like hearing that after every couple of levels or so, kind of like the original.
Yeah.
Like that would feel more in line with its original use.
Right. Well, don't get me wrong when I say this, because I love Doom and I love Doom Eternal, but the music, as much as it fits the MO and the feel of the game, it doesn't fit the narrative of the game. The whole idea of Mick Gordon gave us a free game with an album is the comment that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Like the music is outstanding for both of the new Dooms, and the heaviness and the intensity match the feel that the game is going for, but a lot of the times it doesn't match where it should be in the game, like Lug was saying.
I was saying, they brought back Dark Halls, the level 3 theme from the first game, for the Mars level. Like, okay, that kind of works. Wouldn't have been my first choice to use Dark Halls, but that makes sense. But then it gets used for the Ark Complex, which is basically the UAC's enemy at this point. I'm like, why are you using music that was always associated with the UAC for the arc resistance, and then it gets used again as the "you lose" jingle when in multiplayer. Like, why? It doesn't make sense.
What is it like the Ludo musical disconnect where the gameplay doesn't match the music?
I don't know.
Yeah, I get what you're touching on. Yeah, that would definitely be kind of an apt description of it.
Man. It's like, hey kids, remember this? And it's like a really like quiet scene.
Or even the more recent stuff, like the music that plays for 2016's main menu. There's a remix of it that plays during combat of the game of Doom Eternal's second level, which is this medieval landscape, which is weird because there isn't anything quite like that in 2016, unless you really, really want to stretch Argent Dinner, the last level of 2016, which is just kind of a technicality, but it still looks like all the other hell levels. It's just, it only makes sense if you read the lore, but otherwise, if you don't have the context of the lore, there's no real connection at all.
Well, I mean, honestly, the best way to enjoy Doom's music is the way Heavenly Father does, which is in your car, emotionless, staring straight ahead, while Mastermind is going da 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 in on your car speakers.
That one was just so weird. It's like, what, that tune? Why is that used for the final boss? Like, the normal fight themes are more intense than that. Why that? And why didn't they use the actual Spider Mastermind theme? Like, why they bring back all these tracks, but then you don't bring back the Spider Mastermind theme for the Spider Mastermind. You don't bring back the Cyber Demon theme for the Cyber Demon. Why? It just drives me. It's also like, it sounds so good, but they're not connected.
Yeah.
Well, I think it does stretch back to that point Chris made, which is a lot of these companies, even if they have a lot of passion for the project, or at least there are people in there who have passion for the project, a lot of the main heads really don't care. And so they'll bring somebody in who is, by all means, because Mick Gordon is a phenomenal talent, but he's, and he's the right pick. It just feels like he might not have gotten the proper direction that he needed to make the game music. He made a phenomenal 2 albums out of Doom music, but he didn't make Doom music. He made 2 albums that happened to be in Doom. If that makes any sense.
Well, it's funny too how musicians or composers and game developers work together. Like, did you know that in Street Fighter 2, all of those background themes were not made with the backgrounds in mind?
Really?
Yeah, all of those were just randomly assigned. They actually didn't have anything to do with the scenes. In fact, Guile's theme most likely should have been Ken's theme, because Ken's theme was a ripoff of what's it? God, what the hell is it? Like Under Wings of Glory or whatever. It was a Kenny Loggins song.
Oh yeah, and that probably should have been Guile's theme, all things told.
Yeah, because it was basically Top Gun, a military guy. Yeah. So,
well, I mean, we can even talk about, one of the tightest music to scene performance, where in Donkey Kong Country, because Funky Kong's theme was never supposed to belong in Donkey Kong Country at all. It was supposed to be Killer Instinct.
Rare.
Which is hilarious, because all the other levels and all the other themes perfectly match 1-to-1 what it is and where it is you are. And yeah, Funky Kong's theme does match his kind of radical attitude, but it wasn't really part of the of the game dev. It was part of this entirely different project, and it was just kind of a scrap song, and they're like, oh hey, this kind of fits the mood well enough, let's just throw it in here.
Oh yeah, that happens sometimes, like how the tune labeled as Temple that was just used for Banjo-Kazooie's test level, then supposedly would have been used for Fungus Forest, ended up in Donkey Kong 64.
Man.
Yeah.
I mean, but like Donkey Kong Country gave us some of the best like music. Like, come on, Aquatic Ambiance. Like everybody knows
dude,
about that one.
That's an award winner, ain't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that I
I'm
think
not-
Sticker Brush or whatever. Yeah,
Sticker
whatever
Brush
that-
Symphony.
Yeah, those two like stand out over like clearly there were engineers involved in that music because they made the sound chip on the SNES do things it wasn't intended to do.
I mean, honestly, I'm not here to dog on Donkey Kong Country's soundtrack. Donkey Kong Country or Donkey Kong Country 2, I do not dog on their soundtrack whatsoever. Those things are straight fire, and I will listen to them in my day-to-day.
Mhm.
But I just kind of find it funny, a little fun tidbit that I knew that it's like, oh yeah, Funky Kong's song was never meant to be in Donkey Kong Country. Supposed to be a Killer Instinct song.
Man, well, Killer Instinct had a pretty sweet soundtrack too. I mean, the game even came with a CD, the Killer Cuts.
Yeah, or how Grant Kirkhope has spent years repurposing cut Project Dream tracks for various other projects.
Yeah.
Like even its main theme eventually got repurposed for Oven Fresh Day for Viva Pinata.
Viva Pinata.
Wow, that is not a name that is not a name I have heard in a long time.
Wasn't that like an Xbox 360 launch title?
Yeah, it was.
Oh, launch
Yeah,
title. I know they launched with Cameo Elements of Power, which I believe
Yep.
is technically the first Xbox 360 game, as it was originally being developed for the GameCube.
Oh wow! And then Microsoft had its little deal with Rare, and they're like, yoink.
Yep.
Yep.
Man, they did that with Halo too. Like Halo was supposed to be developed for the Mac and the PC because it was like a spiritual successor to whatever was it, Durandal or whatever. I can't remember what it was called, but there was a.
And I know they made an FPS called Marathon.
That's what it was, Marathon.
But Halo actually just started out as some kind of like real-time strategy game. Then it became a third-person shooter, and then a first-person shooter.
Oh yeah, I remember watching a
They
video
just,
that
yeah, they
covered
wanted
that.
to make something completely different, but then they ended up just going back to their roots anyway.
I have a
Yep.
demo of a demo video that came on one of my game PC Gamer Mag CDs or whatever that showed the vertical slice, which are the most deceptive things that game developers do, the bullshots, a vertical slice of OG Halo, what it was supposed to look like on the PC as a
Mhm.
shooter. And oh my God, did it not deliver? Like everybody that saw this went, holy crap, where is this game and how do I give it money?
Right.
Because it showed them get on a warthog and it showed like there was like a brontosaurus and shit and like all this additional fauna that was
What?
never. Yeah, there was like all these like animals and stuff in that, like he's like driving through like a herd, like that scene in Jurassic Park when the scared dinos were all running and stuff and they're all racing through them on their
Man,
bikes.
that sounds wild as hell.
Yeah, and it even started off. It's funny because it started off from the aliens' perspective, where there's these two aliens talking to one another, and all of a sudden one of them gets sniped, and then the other one's like, "Oh, there he is! Go get him!" And he like jumps on his little grav bike thing. It was like a weird hover bike thing, and then flees over to his buddies on the beach, and they all get on their warthog, and then just kind of drive into the enemy area and just obliterate everybody with the guns on the warthog.
Sounds like one of the Serious Sam 4 teasers.
Yeah.
Well, it also reminds me that, Chief in the games versus Chief in the books are two very different chiefs.
Oh man, the same thing happens with the Doom Slayer.
Yeah. Doom
Where
guy.
apparently he doesn't even where it's like he barely even touches guns in lore or something. I don't know. It's kind of disconnected now.
Well, I remember that in Quake 3 when they it was kind of like the Smash Brothers of shooters for all the id games, because it had the Doom guy, it had Phobos, and it had
Where is he? That Crash and Phobos haven't done anything since their debut.
yeah, they're just kind of like the Ken and Chun-Li of Doom, and they just kind of went away. And then they had Ranger from the original Quake, and then they had Bitterman from Quake 2. And I was like, this is awesome. And then nothing ever came of it. They're just gone, all of them.
Yep.
Man, what if they put in like a grown-up Commander Keen or something?
Oh, jeez.
Wasn't that what Sarge is? the guy with the cigar that gets time warp, because the whole point of Quake 3 was that all of the people in the arena were taken at the moment of their death, and they were pulled from their timeline or whatever and thrown into this arena to shoot and kill each other.
Huh.
Oh, sounds like Drifters.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
going to
or-
die
or
anyway,
Eternal
so you might
Champions.
as well die for our entertainment.
Yeah, that's what it was. In fact, the opening cinematic, which was, I want to say it was Blur. It might not have been, though. Shows Sarge, and he's mowing down waves of space marine, enemy space marines, like the ones in Doom. And then he's hiding behind a pillar as rocket launchers are getting shot at him. And he puts his cigar in his mouth and just runs at them and jumps up on top of them, to do his final stand. And then all of a sudden time freezes, and it does this weird bullet time spin around him like in the Matrix. And this weird warp bubble just grabs him and pulls him out of his time period. And it was
yes. The good old days when, the Matrix special effects were actually special.
Yeah. Do you remember, was it 3D Mark 2000 or whatever? Or no, 3D Mark 90. Yeah, 3D Mark 97 or 98 or whatever had a Matrix homage in it before the Matrix was even a thing. The movie was announced, but it wasn't in theaters yet. And you saw this scene, and it was literally the lobby scene from the Matrix. And that lobby scene became Max Payne.
Basically.
Yeah, the developers that built that tech demo, the little movie that was using to test your video card, all the exploding tiles and the bullet time and all the projectiles and tracing lines, it was all just Max Payne. They just reskinned it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. God, I miss that. I remember the first mod I got for Max Payne where it was the Jackie Chan mod, where instead of just doing guns, you actually did martial arts.
Oh, that's rad.
You roundhouse kick guys and stuff. You do the what is it, the rumble punch or whatever, where he does a rolling thing with his hands. He's punching him 100 times.
Oh yeah. The muda 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 muda.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although if I were being honest, and this is kind of my fanboy roots showing up here, if they were going to include a martial arts mod, I would have much rather it been Bruce Lee rather than Jackie Chan.
Oh yeah. Or my favorite now is Donnie Yen. Donnie Yen with Sammo Hung as a martial arts choreographer is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of martial arts cinematography. Bruce was the founder, and he perfected, he honed it into what it is today. But I think that Sammo Hung with Donnie Yen brought it to
Perfected
a whole new level. Yeah, somebody made a CGI movie of Donnie Yen versus Bruce Lee fighting, and it was friggin' chef's kiss.
You're gonna have to send me a link to that because I'm gonna want to see it.
All right,
But the other thing, at least with as far as Bruce Lee is involved, is he was just an absolute pinnacle martial artist. Just period. End of story.
Yeah, he had OCD or something, because everything was snap tight perfect.
I don't think it was necessarily OCD. It might have been, but I think it was just that he was just a raw perfectionist.
Yeah, it was at a whole other level that most people, nobody else, maybe a few people in history have had, but yeah, I mean, Yeah, and it's weird because he's like an artist too. Like he was, if the martial arts thing didn't work out for him, or the bodybuilding or whatever, he could have totally been like infographic artist or something for like manuals and stuff.
He was also a grand philosopher.
Yeah, what is it? Be formless, shapeless like water. You pour water into a teacup, it becomes the teacup.
Yeah. You pour water in a cup, it becomes the cup. You pour
Yep.
water in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Be
water,
water,
my
my
friend.
friend.
Yeah. He's explaining to a Westerner what Chinese boxing was, what we now call kung fu. And,
Or at least what kung fu used to be before it got, corrupted by all of the I'm Mr. Magical, I can kill people with a single finger.
yeah.
The real Steven Seagal types.
Well, you saw what happened. There was a comedian in China who went around beating the crap out of all of these kung fu masters because he was like an actual fighter.
Yeah.
And Communist Party just like destroyed this man economically and forced him to, whenever he competed in a match, to dress up like a clown or something.
Yeah,
And
I remember watching the Count Dankula episode of Mad Lads on him.
yeah, that's the guy.
Yep.
Man, it sucks because it's the truth. What is it? The truth is an enemy in a world of lies.
Mm-hmm. But the one major thing about Bruce Lee's philosophy that probably drove him to the height he achieved was that he personally believed that if you were not attempting to become more superior to your past self from 1 week ago, a year ago, a day ago, a second ago, then you might as well die.
Yeah. Well, that's
his mindset every day.
Well, that's a Japanese mindset too. It's called Kaizen. It literally means always improving. And it helps people attain realistic goals, where the idea is that instead of going for a grandiose improvement, you're always improving at a micro level. Every day you're taking that baby step forward instead of that massive hike or that massive climb.
Yeah, I think there was a particular quote that really burned it into that particular idea into my mind for me with Bruce Lee, where he was working out with this guy who was like 50 years old, and I think Bruce Lee was probably in his mid-30s at this point. Mm-hmm. He was still a fairly young guy, and he'd been taking him out on 3-mile runs every day, and he'd been, doing well for the most part. And he said, all right, tomorrow we're doing 5. He's like, Bruce Lee, I'm not doing 5 miles. You are a far younger man than me. I can't do it. He says, all right, we'll go to 3 miles and we'll just keep going.
Yeah, then die.
5. And when he hit 3 miles, he was doing well for a little bit. And then he just started having physical troubles. And he's like, Bruce Lee, I can't go anymore. If I go, I'm liable to die by a heart attack. And Bruce Lee, straight to his face, told him, then die.
Yep.
And that's kind of what cemented it for me as to, number one, why Bruce Lee attained the heights he did, to the point where at least the cameras at the time couldn't catch his punches. And he was basically one of the greatest CQC martial artists of all time.
Well, he's the granddaddy of mixed martial arts too.
Oh, absolutely. His foundation in Jeet Kune Do is the foundation of MMA.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the whole be formless, shapeless like water. He only took what worked.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If only
dance.
other Budo, other weapon arts would follow in his suit, because honestly, I feel like martial arts, and I know this is getting way off topic, but this is something I actually am rather passionate about. But I feel like martial arts still hasn't hit its peak. Not even close.
Yeah.
It's getting there. It's just a lot of the, and some are better than others in different respects. But I feel like, that whole world still has new levels to attain. At least that's the way I see it.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything has something, like nothing is ever perfected except for chess. Every time there's been an attempt to improve chess, they busted it. Man. Yeah, they tried adding pieces like the Pope and the cannon to chess, and it was like, no. Let's go back to the
what was that other one that was a real bad gimmick? 3D chess.
Oh God. Or 4D chess from Star Trek.
Yep.
Yeah. Just 8x8, queen on color. There you go. There's your game.
Is there anything else that we want to like touch base on, at least for today?
Yeah.
Yeah, I might have to have a part 2 to all this so we can start hearing about everything you've been going through behind the scenes, or what you know of all this Unity to Godot exodus.
Oh,
I mean,
God.
honestly, I wouldn't mind this being kind of more of like just a regular podcast that we show up and do and talk video games, and maybe even interview other people from the industry. I'm sure Chris has his contacts.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's been 10 years since I've been in the industry. I don't know how many people want to talk to me.
Well, I mean, even then, if we wanted to talk to like some indie creators, I do have access to basically a whole Discord full of them.
Oh, nice.
So I could see who would
Be at least amenable to coming on, answering questions, talking about stuff, talking about their personal experiences being, game devs, especially some of the ones who are farther along than say I am in the project. Because I'm basically way pre-alpha. There are people like CQ, Natsukaze, I know Krabby Sam, Seizui, like Daniel. Those guys are like well into their project, so they probably have a whole lot more to add on than probably I do. I'm just a guy who gets really passionate about this kind of stuff. That's all.
Yeah. Well, we've been going for what, 3.5 hours now? 3 hours, 20 minutes?
Just about, yeah. That's kind of why I was like, hey, is there anything else we want to touch up on? Because, you leave us to it. We could probably keep talking and bouncing topic to topic and still steering it back into gaming for another, 5 hours at this point?
Yeah, I know. I got to get some dinner in me soon.
Yeah, same here.
Where else are we going? Like, there were some proper leitmotifs in Eternal. Like, hey, Sinister was used well. Fits great in cultist areas.
I mean, honestly, part of the reason why I love talking about this kind of stuff is the rising tide raises all ships. And so, just talking to each other, I've been taking notes off of what Chris has been saying, and I'm sure, Chris appreciates, the stuff I'm trying to lay out. And so having, more voices and more talk about this only breeds, more understanding for this medium that we all love and, want to preserve and keep alive.
Welcome to Log Berserk's Dialectic on Game Development. Episode 5. Unity can screw itself.
Sounding like the Stanley Parable guy.
The David Attenborough. Like, have you seen the Lonely Streetwalker? Like,
Chris, are you sure you haven't missed your calling as a voice actor?
God, well, some of my stuff that was placeholder actually made it into the game, into some of the games I worked on. So
yeah,
fun stuff.
I say that because I'm I'm also an aspiring voice actor. I've got a friend who's an aspiring voice actor. So it's like, even just like pulling that off, I'm like, oh my God, this is like an old British historical documentary right here. Like, this is nostalgia vibes right here. It's like, are you sure you didn't miss your call? Maybe you could do some historical documentaries. Maybe you were part of Stanley Parable. I don't know.
Yeah, I did some of that. That Galactic Road to Mayhem review was fun. Did like all the male voices, all
Nice.
of them.
Nice.
Oh man, yeah. But voice acting is like I was saying. I know I ranted earlier about it, but like the whole Hollywood crap, where it's like you don't need Hollywood in video games.
Honestly, it would probably be better if you didn't have Hollywood in video games.
Well, I mean, some of the greatest voice actors started out as lowly, like no names. Like look at Nolan North. You know, like he's not Hollywood.
Or Christ, I always forget his name, but the voice of Mario.
Oh yeah, God, something for net. No, oh damn, it just slipped my mind. Damn the senility. Yeah, I know who you're talking about.
He basically got his start. His big break was Mario.
Yeah. Man. Well, yeah, unfortunately, he's no longer the voice of Mario.
He's the Mario ambassador now, but even then, oh, or how about this one? Rick May.
Who's that?
He's the voice of Soldier for Team Fortress 2, most notably, but he did a whole lot of other voice acting specifically for video games.
Oh, nice.
The only reason I bring him up is because he passed away a couple of years ago during, the Wuhan flu, the Xinjiang plague, whatever you want to call it. And, everybody considers him one of the most beloved video gaming voice actors of all time because his voice is recognizable. But he was never a Hollywood actor. He never did work in Hollywood.
Man, so he's the soldier. So was it last one out locks the door?
Yeah. We can no longer teleport bread.
Yeah.
Or
it's all like
one of my other favorite quotes, and that's why it's called a zoo, unless it's a farm.
I loved those little meet the Team Fortress hero vignettes. Like they really made it character driven.
The voice actors for them, aside from Scout, who's probably still a little too young and too involved in his work, they get together and they'll playing their characters just for the sheer love of being their characters. So you will see their voice actors in real life voice acting and acting like their characters.
Well, wasn't the voice actor for the sniper, wasn't that guy a real, like he's not even Australian, he's like British or whatever, and he starred in that movie FX?
I think
he looks like a younger version of Michael Caine.
Yeah.
Yeah, sniping's a good job, mate. I love that. He's like arguing with us. Put mom on the phone.
And it's funny because he's also the medic.
Oh, Herr Doctor.
The hurting is much better than the healing.
Yeah. Danke, Herr Doctor. When he gets healed by another doctor.
Mm-hmm. I think the only voice actors who don't participate in those kinds of things are because it's only two that don't really join in because they're still too young and too involved in their work to really kind of meet together with the rest of the voice actors and mess around. But it's basically the guy who does Scout and the guy who does NG. Everybody else is more than happy to get together and do all kinds of zany, wacky shenanigans in the real world as their characters.
You know, the original Scout was supposed to be an American. Oh, I'm sorry, not a Scout. The original Demo Man. He was supposed to be like 70s blaxploitation. And
I love it so much more that he is a Scotsman.
yeah, that completely came out of left field because in the original montage it was boom boom baby, and he was swinging a bunch of cartoon like a bundle of TNT like dynamite, and he was swinging it by the wick, and he was just spinning it in his hand as the weapon. He didn't have the gun, that whatever it is, the grenade launcher. So they like retooled him and made him I'm a black Scottish Cyclops.
I see
love it.
Robin Atkin Dawn's getting into a lot of stuff.
Who's that?
And I see like Robin Atkin Dawn's getting into a ton of this stuff.
Oh, who's Robin Atkin Dawns?
The medic.
Oh, yeah.
He also plays let's see, he's also done some piratey voices. He's Captain Slag in the Ratchet and Clank series, and he also did the video game voice for Davy Jones in the Pirates of the Caribbean video games and Kingdom Hearts.
Nice.
Now,
is that the sniper too, or
I might have I might have got my hairs crisscrossed, but I know some of the characters voice act other characters. Like they have like 2 or 3 different roles. And I never forget. I never remember who does which one. It's just because it was either Sniper also voiced Spy, or it was Sniper also voiced the Doctor.
Oh well, yeah. So Charles Martinet there, the voice of Mario, the retired voice. He did Luigi, he did Wario, Waluigi.
Wasn't he also one of the dragons in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim, or was that Tom Kenny?
Yes, he was Parthenax.
Oh wait, the dragons in Skyrim?
Yeah, Charles Martinet was Parthenax.
No. Oh yeah, I'm on fire. Like,
I love that mod so much.
Just the intro of it, like alone, where it was like, "Ain't no stopping the Macho Man," and it's like echoing off the mountains, and it's like, "Did you hear that?" And it's like, "There it is again," and then he's like, "What is it? I'm on fire! Oh, yeah." Wow. So yeah, when he takes flight, he goes, "Macho Man, sky's the limits," or "Cream of the crop, rise to the top." And I'm like, oh, he's taking flight.
Oh my god. Honestly, even if they just replace the voice and never mess with the textures to turn the dragons into Macho Man Randy Savage, it still would have been a top tier mod.
Yeah. Because I'm wild. Yeah. So stupid.
The other favorite, one of my other favorite ones was turning all the dragons into Thomas the Tank Engine.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking that.
There it is again. Where it like bursts through the wall while he's running up the stairs. Oh man. Yeah, like I never see like Skyrim, like Elder Scrolls games or Bethesda games in general bore me. Like when they're vanilla, like they're bug ridden, they're ugly, they're really formulaic. But the moment you throw mods,
games are only fun the first time around, because then you're discovering all the bugs and all the wild, crazy crap that those guys are like, yeah, screw it, it'll work. But as soon as the modders get a hold of it,
yeah, the modders make those games because, like, not only did they make it absolutely gorgeous, like I played. So even the title screen, it had that Mexican chick who did the Dovahkiin theme. Like it had her voice instead of the orchestral or the instrumental title screen. And then there was like the real life mods or whatever that like made all the foliage and everything look good. And then I had like the hot chick mods where the characters weren't so ugly.
Oh, absolutely. What was one of my personal favorite Skyrim mods of all time is basically a top-down overhaul of all the engine, make it into a brand new game.
Oh,
Enderall.
total conversion.
Yeah, it was a
Enderall.
total conversion mod called Enderall.
Wow.
And I mean, it did not mess with the textures whatsoever. Everything that is in Enderall is straight from the Skyrim engine. But the way that they tweak the systems and the way that they have the difficulty scale, it is an entirely different game in both mood and feel. And my God, is it hard. Like you thought Skyrim was, hard when you first start out. Enderall will absolutely just take that notion and dunk on it. Like I think I remember dying probably about 20 or 30 times in the first 5 minutes. Like the first 5 minutes of the games, I was just dying constantly because it was that hard. It was that much of a skill curve, and even then, I'm not exactly that great at it at the game. It's wonderful though. It's awesome.
Man,
But
speaking of total conversions, I worked on, I should say, a total conversion of Half-Life 2 that like, oh God, man. That game like started off as a mod for a game called Dungeon Siege. And then once we got a hold of all the leaked source engine for Half-Life 2, started working on that. Holy crap, man. That thing was way too ambitious for its time.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm looking at the old website. The last entry for when we worked on it was 2005. It was just as I got into the industry. And wow, yeah, man. Whew. To be in my 20s again. Total conversion mods, man. Those things are those are painful.
Oh, I bet. But there's also one that I'm keeping an eye on right now, which is Tamriel Reforged.
Oh, nice. They're gonna do Skyrimized remaster of Oblivion.
They're basically doing.
Oh no, wait, that
all
was
the
Cyrodiil.
Well, they're doing all the previous ones. The other previous games they're going to make through Skyrim. So, they're going to rework Skyrim, they're reworking Oblivion, they're reworking Morrowind, and they're reworking 2. They're basically reconverting all of those into Skyrim, and I think they're also trying to add other areas of the map, like Elsewhere and Black Marsh and Somerset Isles. Basically, just trying to go hard in the paint on this,
Oh yeah. Uh-oh.
But hey, yeah. What's up, Chris?
Oh, I thought your mic was dying again. I was like, uh-oh.
No, I was actually just about to say it's about dinner time for me,
Yeah.
Lug. So I might have to hop off, and I'm thinking Chris might want to as well to get food for himself. So we might want to do a part 2 of this to touch base more on some of the other stuff too.
Sure, it's cool. You down for that, Lug?
Earth Lug.
Oh yeah, yeah. I was trying to say that. Yes, I muted my microphone for a sec because my chair squeaks a bunch when I move.
Hey, it's no problem. I just kind of figured, you know.
But yes, wanting to hear what you've seen.
Yeah.
Well, my purview of the actual industry might be rather limited since I was always an outsider looking in. But I'm always more than willing to share whatever perspectives or knowledge I have gained on, any of the topics, especially about video games. So I'd be more than willing to do that.
Yes.
But I suppose this would be perfect time for last thoughts.
Well, I'm thinking I'm hungry.
Yeah. Tengo ganas mucho
Same
hambre.
here. I'm probably gonna head over to a ramen shop. Not gonna lie, honestly.
Nice.
Yeah, there's one like just right up the street from me, and they make some of the best ramen in America. There's no topping the ramen that's from Japan.
Yeah.
But
MSG, go for me.
anyhow, I guess my last thought on video games is support your local indie. It'll do the industry a whole lot of good, and vote with your wallet. Stop buying all these AAA slog fests and let the reviewers get their hands on it first.
Yeah.
Stop pre-ordering crap.
Yeah, I tend to just like wait until those inevitable complete editions or whatever get released.
Game of the year.
Yeah, I'm very much the same on that, unless, again, I know the particular dev, I've been watching them work, I know what's going on. I'm more than happy to just throw money early at that because I know what's going to go on. But when it comes to AAA, just wait for the reviews. Stop pre-ordering stuff. You're going to end up with a lot less disappointment. The AAA studios are going to have to, pick up and actually clean house on their shit, and the industry as a whole will be a lot better if we actually take some personal responsibility on our spending decisions.
Yeah, I don't make a habit of it. Like, yeah, sure, I did it for Darksiders 3, Devil May Cry 5, Doom Eternal, Sonic Frontiers, because I knew those were going to deliver.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it for Tears of the Kingdom, but again, it was because I knew it was going to do well and I knew I was going to love it. So,
Yeah.
just make smart decisions where you spend your money with games, and work with your local indies. And if you want to get into the space, picking our brains is usually the best way to start, because I can't tell you how many times I've been like, hey, I have no idea what engine I should go with because I'm starting from the 2D side rather than the 3D side. And they're like, yeah, here, this is, these are great ideas for game engines. These are great ideas for, sound engines, this, that, and the other. I'm like, whoa. They were throwing thousands of really good ideas at me. And it was just like, they want you to succeed and they want you to be part of the space. So if you talk with them, most of those people are really cool, unless they're yandere dev.
Yeah, I just oh, okay. The dark side of the indie scene.
Exactly.
But yeah, I guess at the moment I just largely want to just really make my PS1, N64, Windows 98 style game.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's also what's important, is know what you want to play, and so that you know what you want to create.
I mean, this is
You
the game
know.
I literally dreamed about when I was 6. So I've had a lot of time to think about it.
Yeah, and I guess one last piece of advice from somebody who's going in: this is not a job. Unless you actually, get lucky and you make it big, and you're a Five Nights at Freddy's or you're, a Toby Fox, this is not a job. This is a hobby. This is something you put your time and your passion into because you enjoy doing it. So, aim for success, but don't plan for it.
Prepare.
Make what you want to see out in the world, but if it falls absolutely flat on its face, don't be surprised. Just be glad that you were able to do it.
Prepare for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah, that's the story of my life.
I think that's the story of everybody's lives. It's just that they forget they forget the reality of it when it comes to their own stuff.
Oh yeah.
You got any, how about you, Chris? You got any advice or anything like that?
Trust me on the sunblock. No, no, yeah, I it was a
In
good
the
chat,
studio?
man. Yeah. We've been going on for
All of
almost
you
4
assume
hours.
we'll see the sun.
Yeah. Until what is it? Until we blotted out to stop the rise of the machines.
Right.
It was us who darkened the sun, or us
Down with
who
solar
stained the
power.
sky. Yeah. Thanks.
I mean,
Gabe.
honestly, this was just really good as kind of like a dev jam sort of thing. Like just, talking shop and kind of getting perspectives.
Yeah, yeah.
And also just reminiscing on days of old. So
Yeah, man. Just reminded me of a freaking 20-year-old mod I worked on. God.
Well, anyhow, I guess if we don't, Lug, you got anything to say? I know I'm not trying to take over your stream by any chance, but
This the one you're talking about?
Yeah, yeah. God, look at that. 2005 was the last entry.
Oh, dude. You ready to feel old?
Sure.
So I'm writing a comic
Man,
book
so
series.
smart.
It's a period piece that takes place in the year 2005.
In the
Oh, wow, yeah. Oh, it feels so painful to have 2005 be called a period piece.
Yeah. Yeah, when that's the classics, like when they're like, and now for the oldies station 101 playing, was it music from the oldies, here's, and it's something from like 2005. I'm like, no!
Here's Gorillas.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah,
it's just
retro
so-
games like that Gears of War for old people.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you remember that really old game? I think it was called Uncharted.
God. Dude, I wasn't even that old back in 2005. I was 10. And yet
Sonic
it's being called
06
the
is
classics. Oh my God, I feel so
Sonic
old.
06 is technically in the first half of Sonic the Hedgehog's history.
Wow.
Sonic 06 is older now than Sonic 1 was when Sonic 06 came out.
Jeez.
Oh, God.
Well, if they did that 70s show today, it would take place in the 2000s.
That hurts. That
Yeah.
hurts just to hear, but you're not wrong.
Yeah, that's some scary stuff to think about.
Oh,
We're
absolutely.
Man.
Anyhow,
I
I'm
don't
gonna some waves because I got some food to eat, man.
Yeah, me too. It was good talking with everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. It was great,
Yeah.
picking minds and reminiscing.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do this again sometime.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. I haven't even
And
gotten
maybe
to,
this
like,
time
talk
I won't be,
mechanics or
an hour and a half late.
Yeah, you wanted to talk mechanics. He's like, damn, these guys ramble too much.
Yeah, you were the patch
Unfortunately, you
update.
got a war veteran and a writer, two of the worst people when you want to have a focused discussion on anything.
Stay a while and listen. Man.
But hey,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sign off. I'll catch you guys later.
All right, have a good one. I got to get going too. Do we do anything in the closing, or do we just sign out, or?
I don't know. I guess I'm just as unfocused as you guys.
Well, we can figure that out next time. I'm just gonna hop off. So
Yeah, me
peace.
too. Sweet. Have a good one, Shiro. All right, I'll get going too. Thanks for having me on, man.
Absolutely. I want to do this more.
Sweet. Cool. All right. Well, I guess I'll talk to you later then.
Definitely.
Have a good one, man. See you. Bye-bye.
Whew. Yeah, definitely going to have to do this more often. Now, what should I do with this design document I drew in crayon when I was 6? File this away for later.